Hello guys, welcome to Fiction Quest. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto get married with 13 girl in world of DxD and got harem? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Sage in a World of Devils. The world returned to him not in a rush of light or a cacophony of sound, but in the gentle, indifferent whisper of wind through leaves. One moment, he was awash in the blinding, all-consuming power of the final seal. A clash of chakra so immense it had torn the fabric of reality. The next, he was lying on his back, staring up at a canopy of unfamiliar green leaves against a sky that was just a shade too blue. The air tasted wrong. It was thick with an energy that vibrated against his senses, a strange, cloying sweetness mixed with something sharp and metallic, like ozone after a storm. It wasn't chakra, it wasn't nature energy, it was something else entirely. Naruto sat up, his body moving with the fluid economy of a lifelong warrior. There was no pain, no lingering ache from the fourth great ninja war. He felt whole, more than whole. The power of the six paths still coursed through him, a calm, vast ocean within his soul. He flexed his fingers, watching the faint go. Elden aura shimmer around them before fading. He was alive. Sasuke was alive. Sakura and Kakashi-sensei, too. They had won. So why wasn't he home? He pushed himself to his feet, his worn black pants and the tattered remains of his orange jacket feeling strangely out of place in this serene, untouched forest. He closed his eyes, extending his senses. The nature energy here was thin, almost frail, but the other foreign energy was everywhere, pulsing in unseen currents. He could feel life signatures nearby. Several of them, clustered together, their energy flaring with aggression and fear. And one larger, monstrous signature, radiating pure, undiluted malice. Curiosity, a trait as ingrained in him as his love for ramen, pulled him forward. He moved silently through the dense woods, a ghost in the trees. His presence completely masked. The sounds of battle reached him first. Shouts, the crackle of lightning, the clang of steel, and a guttural roar that made the very air tremble. He emerged at the edge of a wide clearing and paused, taking in the scene. A group of teenagers, dressed in what looked like a school uniform, were locked in a desperate struggle against a grotesque creature. It was a hulking beast of shadow and sinew, with too many limbs and a maw that dripped a viscous, black ichor. Its roar was a wave of raw, negative emotion. Naruto's analytical gaze swept over the defenders. A red-haired girl stood at the center, her expression a mixture of fierce determination and growing desperation. A crimson aura flared around her as she unleashed blasts of destructive energy, but the monster weathered them, its flesh regenerating almost instantly. Beside her, a black-haired girl with a serene smile that didn't quite reach her eyes called down bolts of yellow lightning from the sky. A handsome blonde boy darted in and out of the fray, his speed incredible, wielding a sword that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light. A small, white-haired girl, looking no older than 12, met the monster's charges head-on, her tiny fists delivering blows that cratered the earth. And a brown-haired boy with a red gauntlet on his arm was shouting encouragement, though he seemed more of a liability than an asset. His movements clumsy and unrefined. They fought with surprising coordination, a well-oiled team. But they were losing. Their attacks lacked the definitive, killing power needed to put the beast down for good. It was a battle of attrition, and their reserves were visibly dwindling. The monster swatted the small girl aside, sending her tumbling into the trees. It ignored the lightning from the sky and barreled past the swordsman, its dozens of eyes fixed on the red-haired leader. The brown-haired boy, Issei, charged forward with a reckless cry, his gauntlet glowing. Boost, 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 dragon shot. A pathetic stream of red energy dribbled out, splashing harmlessly against the creature's hide. The monster didn't even seem to notice. A single, backhanded slap sent the boy flying, his body slamming into a tree with a sickening crack. Issei, the red-haired girl cried out, her focus breaking for a fatal second. The beast seized the opening. It lunged, its claws extended, aiming to tear her apart. The black-haired girl shouted a warning. The blonde boy was too far away to intercept, and the crimson energy flared around the leader as she braced for an impact she couldn't fully block. Naruto sighed. He hadn't asked to be here, wherever, here, was. He didn't know these people. But he knew the look of someone fighting to protect their comrades. And he had never been one to stand by and watch that happen. One moment he was at the edge of the woods. The next, he was standing between the girl and the monster. He didn't announce his arrival with a dramatic shout or a flashy technique. He simply appeared, a flicker of gold in the fading light, his back to the stunned girl and her comrades. He raised a single, open palm, catching the monster's building-sized claw. There was no earth-shattering impact. No shockwave. Just a dead stop. The creature's immense, forward momentum vanished, utterly and completely absorbed. The ground beneath Naruto's feet didn't even crack. A profound silence fell over the clearing, broken only by the panting of the exhausted fighters. The stray devil, a being driven by primal instinct, felt something it hadn't expressed. Experienced since its corruption. Absolute terror. The figure before it was not large, but the power radiating from him felt infinite, like staring into the sun. It tried to pull its claw back, but it was held fast. From behind him, Naruto heard the red-haired girl's voice, strained but still laced with authority. Who are you? He didn't turn around. His focus was on the whimpering beast. He had seen enough hatred, enough mindless destruction, to last 1,000 lifetimes. He had no pity for a creature like this. He brought his other hand up, letting his chakra gather in his palm. It swirled into existence, a perfect, spinning sphere of pure, concentrated power. The Rasengan. The energy it emitted was alien to the onlookers. It wasn't demonic, it wasn't holy, it wasn't light and it wasn't dark. It was pure, primal energy, condensed with a mastery that was simply incomprehensible. It hummed with a clean, devastating sound that cut through the oppressive atmosphere. This is for interrupting my nap, Naruto said, his voice calm and even. He pushed forward. There was no resistance. The Rasengan met the monster's chest, and for a half-second, nothing happened. Then, with a silent, violent implosion of grinding energy, the stray devil ceased to exist. It didn't explode. It didn't scream. It was simply unmade, erased from reality. Where the hulking beast had stood, there was now only empty air and a faint, shimmering distortion that quickly faded. The battle that had pushed a high-class devil and her peerage to their absolute limit was over. Just like that, Naruto let his hand fall to his side. The golden shimmer of his six paths sage mode receding from his skin, his eyes returning from their cross-hatched state to their normal, brilliant sapphire blue. The sudden quiet was deafening. He finally turned to face the group he had just saved, his gaze sweeping over them. They were battered, bruised, but alive. He took in the red-haired girl's shocked expression, the black-haired girl's wary and intensely curious smile, the blonde boy's guarded stance, and the tiny girl staring at him with wide, unblinking eyes. He offered them a small, tired smile. "Sorry to drop in like that," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that was completely at odds with the terrifying power he had just displayed. "Now, can anyone tell me where I am?" Gremory was not easily rattled. The heiress to one of the 72 pillars of the underworld, she had been trained since birth to project an aura of command and control, no matter the circumstances. But as she stared at the blonde man who had appeared from nowhere and obliterated a stray devil that had nearly overwhelmed her entire peerage, she found her carefully constructed composure cracking. He stood there, unassuming in his strange, tattered clothes. Yet the sheer pressure of his existence was suffocating. It wasn't an aggressive aura, not like a fallen angel's corrupted light or a rival devil's arrogant posturing. It was a calm, bottomless well of power that simply was. "I am Gremory," she said, her voice regaining its steady, aristocratic tone. She stepped forward, gesturing to her companions. "This is my peerage, Akeno Himahima, my queen, Yuto Kiba, my knight, and Kaneko Tuju, my rook." She purposefully left out the unconscious Issei. There was no need to introduce their weakest link just yet. "We are devils, and you are trespassing in our territory." It was a weak attempt to seize control of the situation, and they both knew it. The man, Naruto, merely raised an eyebrow. The name Gremory meant nothing to him, nor did the titles. But he understood the dynamic. She was the leader, the one in charge. He gave a slight nod of acknowledgement. "Naruto, Just Naruto, he replied. His gaze was direct, holding no hint of deception. I don't mean to trespass. To be honest, I'm not even sure how I got here. 1 minute I was finishing a fight, the next I was waking up in your forest. Akeno glided forward to stand beside Rias, her usual playful, seductive smile firmly in place, though her eyes were sharp and analytical. Era, a strong, handsome man just falling from the sky. It must be my lucky day, she purred. A faint crackle of lightning dancing at her fingertips. It was a test, a subtle probe of his power and temperament. Naruto's eyes flickered to the sparks of lightning, and a ghost of a smile touched his lips. It was a cute parlor trick compared to Sasuke's Kirin or Kakashi's Reikiri. You're welcome to try your luck, he said, his tone light but carrying an undercurrent of unshakable confidence. He met her gaze directly. And for a moment, Akeno's smile faltered. There was no lust in his eyes, no flicker of interest in her flirtation. It was the calm, knowing gaze of someone who had faced down gods and monsters. And found her wanting. She felt a shiver, not of fear, but of profound intrigue. Rias saw the exchange and pressed on, her mind racing. This man, this Naruto, was an anomaly. His power was immense, yet felt completely foreign. He was lost, alone, and clearly had no understanding of their world. An asset, a ridiculously powerful, untamable asset, but an asset nonetheless. You say you are not from this world, Rias stated, her tone shifting from confrontational to inquisitive. That is a bold claim. It's the only one that makes sense, Naruto said with a shrug. The energy here is all wrong. And I've never heard of devils before. His casual dismissal of one of the three great factions was so genuine it was almost comical. He wasn't being arrogant, he was simply stating a fact from his perspective. Rias made a decision. An unknown variable of this magnitude could not be left to wander. If he was an enemy, she needed him close. If he could be an ally, the possibilities were staggering. You are clearly powerful, and you are lost, she said, her voice taking on a more magnanimous tone. It is dangerous for someone with no knowledge of our world to be alone. I would like to offer you my hospitality. Come with us. We can provide you with a place to stay and the answers you seek. It was a calculated offer. An invitation wrapped around a demand. Naruto considered it for a long moment. His senses told him they weren't lying about the danger. The raw malice from that monster was a testament to that. He was in an unknown land, with unknown rules and unknown threats. Aligning himself with the first group he met might be reckless, but they were organized, and their leader, for all her youthful pride, seemed to be a rational commander. More importantly, he sensed no true evil in them. They were complicated, a mixture of darkness and light, not unlike himself. All right, Rias Gremory, he said, the name rolling off his tongue with a foreign cadence. I'll accept your offer. Lead the way. As Kiba helped a groaning Issei to his feet, Rias felt a small surge of victory. She had brought this incredible power, at least temporarily, under her purview. But as she watched Naruto walk beside her, his hands tucked casually behind his head in a manner that was completely at odds with the godlike power he wielded, she had the unsettling feeling that she hadn't gained an asset. She had just invited a hurricane into her living room. The headquarters of the Gremory Peerage, the Occult Research Club, was a dilapidated, standalone building on the grounds of Kuo Academy. To Naruto, it looked like a relic, a place forgotten by time. It was a jarring contrast to the life or death battle he had just witnessed. One moment he was fighting a monster from a nightmare. The next he was standing in a dusty, wood-paneled room that smelled of old books and lemon tea. The rest of the peerage had taken up their usual positions. Akeno was preparing tea, Kiba was politely standing by the door, and Kaneko had already curled up on the sofa, nibbling on a chocolate bar. Issei, nursing a massive headache, was slumped in a chair, staring at Naruto with a mixture of awe and raw envy. The tense silence was broken by the shimmering appearance of a silver and blue magic circle on the floor. A woman emerged from it, dressed in a prim maid's outfit that did nothing to hide the immense disciplined power she held in reserve. Her silver hair was braided, and her expression was one of cool, detached professionalism. She exuded an aura of authority that dwarfed even Rias's. Rias Ajo-sama, the maid said, her voice a monotone. I was alerted to a significant expenditure of demonic power, followed by its abrupt cessation. I was also informed of an entified energy signature of unprecedented scale. Explain. Rias straightened up, her demeanor shifting from that of a club president to a noble heiress addressing a superior. Graphia, we encountered a particularly powerful stray devil. We were having some difficulty when we received assistance. Graphia's gaze, sharp as glacial ice, slid from Rias to land squarely on Naruto. There was no surprise in her eyes, only cold, hard analysis. She was dissecting him, measuring his power, assessing his threat level. Naruto met her gaze without flinching, his own senses probing her in return. This woman was strong, deceptively so. Her power was coiled tight, like a spring, ready to unleash devastating force at a moment's notice. And you are this assistance? Graphia asked, her question directed at Naruto. I happen to be in the neighborhood, Naruto replied easily. What is your name and affiliation? Naruto. And my only affiliation is with myself. Graphia's eyebrow twitched, the barest hint of a reaction. Your energy signature does not correspond to any known being on this plane. It is not demonic, nor is it holy, draconic, or phi. What are you? Rias stepped in. Graphia, he says he is from another world. He appeared just before he aided us. She was trying to control the narrative, to frame Naruto as a lost traveler she had taken under her protection. Another world, Graphia repeated, her tone flat. It was not a statement of disbelief, but of a being who had seen enough to consider any possibility. That would explain the uniqueness of your power. What is the nature of this power? Naruto thought for a moment. How could he explain chakra? How could he explain the tailed beasts, the sage of six paths, the complex history of his world to people who wouldn't understand the fundamental concepts? It's the energy of life, he said simply. A connection between spiritual and physical energy. I can use it to do things. The understatement of the century hung in the air. Things, Graphia echoed, such as erasing a high-level stray devil from existence without any discernible effort. He was in my way, Naruto said with a shrug. Issei, who had been silent up to this point, couldn't hold it in any longer. He shot to his feet, a look of indignant outrage on his face. In your way, dude, that thing was about to kill Bushu. We were fighting for our lives. And you Jew, saint. He made a popping sound with his mouth, gesturing wildly. The sudden outburst felt like a child shouting during a formal dinner. Naruto glanced at him, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. He recognized the type, loud, insecure, driven by simple desires. He reminded him a little of himself, back when he was a clueless genin. You fought well, Naruto said, his tone genuine. You protected your leader. That's what matters. The simple, honest praise completely disarmed Issei. He stammered for a moment, his face turning red, before slumping back into his chair, mumbling to himself. Kaneko, W. Ho had been watching Naruto with an unnerving stillness, suddenly hopped off the sofa. She padded over to him, stopping right in front of him. Before anyone could react, she leaned in and sniffed him, her nose twitching like a cat's. Her eyes widened slightly. You smell warm, she said, her voice a quiet monotone. Like sunshine and soup. She then turned, grabbed another chocolate bar from a nearby bowl, and returned to her spot on the couch as if nothing had happened. Graphia watched the exchange, her mind processing every detail. This, Naruto, was an enigma. He was powerful enough to command her respect, yet humble enough to praise a low-class devil like Issei. He was strange enough for a Nekosho to find him comforting. He was a puzzle, and Searzek's Lucifer, her husband and Rias's brother, did not like puzzles he couldn't solve. Rias Ajosama, Graphia said, her attention returning to her charge. Your brother will need to be informed of this development immediately. An entity of this power operating within Gremory territory is a matter for the Saiyans. Until a decision is made, he is your responsibility. Do not fail. It was a clear warning. Any trouble Naruto caused would land squarely on Rias's shoulders. I understand, Graphia, Rias replied, dipping her head respectfully. With a final, lingering look at Naruto, Graphia vanished in another flash of silver light, the magic circle fading from the floor. The oppressive tension in the room lessened, but the weight of her words remained. Well, Akeno said, breaking the silence with a cheerful clap of her hands. Now that the formalities are over, we have a practical issue to address. Where is our guest going to stay? All eyes turned to Naruto. Rias tapped her chin thoughtfully. She needed him close, somewhere she could monitor him. Sending him to the Gremory estate was out of the question without her brother's permission. There was only one other location under her direct supervision. He can stay with Issei, she declared. Two things happened at once. Issei's face lit up with a perverted grin as he imagined all sorts of scenarios, none of which involved a male houseguest. Then, reality crashed down on him. And his face fell into a mask of pure despair. With me. But Bushu, my parents, will be delighted to have a foreign exchange student staying for a while, Rias said, her smile leaving no room for argument. It is the perfect cover. No one would think to look for him there. Naruto, for his part, was completely indifferent. A bed was a bed. A roof was a roof. He had slept in far worse places than a suburban home. Works for me, he said. As Issei began to mentally rearrange his priorities, namely, hiding his extensive porn collection, Rias's handheld communication device, a small demonic charm, pulsed with a soft crimson light. She picked it up, and as she read the message displayed in magical script, the color drained from her face. Her confident demeanor evaporated, replaced by a look of profound dread and weary resignation. Akeno was instantly at her side. Rias, what is it? It's a reminder, Rias said, her voice barely a whisper. From my father. About my upcoming appointment. She didn't need to say more. Everyone in her peerage knew what that meant. The specter of her engagement to Riser Phoenix, a fate she considered worse than death, loomed over them all. Naruto watched the exchange from across the room. He didn't know the details, but he was an expert at reading people. He saw past the powerful devil heiress and the confident king. He saw a young woman trapped, burdened by duties she didn't want, facing a future she feared. It was a look he had seen in the mirror many times. For the first time since arriving in this strange, new world, he felt a flicker of genuine connection. Come on, Issei, Naruto said, clapping the still dazed boy on the shoulder. Show me to this house of yours. I could use a real meal. Issei jumped, startled out of his misery. He looked up at the man who was apparently now his roommate. The man who had effortlessly done what his entire team could not. The man who now stood as a silent, unknown variable in the complex game of politics and power that defined his new life. As Naruto followed Issei out of the clubhouse and into the twilight of this unfamiliar world, the members of the Occult Research Club watched him go. They had survived their battle. But they all knew the real conflict was just beginning. They had just thrown a boulder into the delicate, stagnant pond of the supernatural world, and they had no idea how far the ripples would spread. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. A Sage's Place in a Devil's Game. The Hyodo residence was an exercise in surreal normalcy. After leaving the Occult Research Club, Issei had led Naruto through quiet suburban streets, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple that were achingly familiar. The house itself was a simple, two-story home, neat and unassuming. It was so profoundly ordinary that Naruto felt a pang of something he hadn't realized he'd missed: peace. Issei's parents were, if anything, even more normal. Miki Hyodo, a woman with a perpetually cheerful demeanor, welcomed Naruto with open arms, completely buying the foreign exchange student from Norway story Rias had concocted. Guro Hyodo, a portly man with a kind face, clapped him on the back and offered him a beer, which Naruto politely declined in favor of water. They were simple, kind people, blissfully unaware that their son was a reincarnated devil and their new houseguest was a trans-dimensional shinobi god. Oh, you are just so handsome, Naruto-kun. Mrs. Hyodo gushed, pinching his cheek. And so polite. Issei, you could learn a thing or two from him. Issei, who was trying to shove a poster of a scantily clad anime girl under his bed, froze. Hey, I'm polite, he protested, his voice muffled. Naruto simply smiled. It is an honor to be in your home, Hyodo-san. Thank you for your hospitality. The simple sincerity in his voice seemed to win them over completely. He spoke with a quiet respect that was entirely foreign to their own son's boisterous, hormone-fueled personality. During dinner, he ate with a focused appreciation, answering their questions about his homeland, with vague but charming anecdotes about snowy mountains and quiet villages. He was a perfect guest, which only seemed to infuriate Issei more. Later that night, Naruto lay on the futon they'd prepared for him in Issei's room. The space was a monument to teenage lust, with posters and figurines adorning every surface. Naruto paid them no mind. He closed his eyes, reaching inward, searching for the familiar, grumpy rumble of his oldest friend. But there was nothing. For the first time since he was 16, the vast, cavernous space within his soul where Kurama resided was silent and empty. The violent, reality-tearing clash with Kagaya, it must have severed their connection. He was alone, truly alone. He could still feel the Six Paths' power, a legacy gifted to him, but the presence that had been with him through every battle, every hardship, every bowl of ramen, was gone. A profound sense of loss, sharper than any physical wound, washed over him. The weight of this new world, this new reality, settled onto his shoulders. He was adrift in an unknown sea, with no map and no one to call for. Hey, Issei's voice cut through the darkness. He was sitting up in his bed, looking over at Naruto. The usual perverted idiocy was gone from his expression, replaced by a flicker of genuine curiosity. That thing you did today, Issei said, his voice low. That spinning ball of, whatever. I've never seen anything like it. Not from Bushu, or Akeno-san, or anyone. What was it? Naruto opened his eyes, staring at the ceiling. It's called the Rasengan, he said softly. It's a technique my master created, and his master before him. It's a part of me. It felt different, Issei pressed. When you used it, the air, it felt clean. Not like our demonic power. It felt pure. Naruto turned his head, his blue eyes meeting Issei's brown ones in the dim moonlight. It's just energy. Power isn't good or evil. It's the heart of the person who wields it that decides what it becomes. Issei fell silent, chewing on that. He had been so obsessed with the power of his sacred gear, with becoming a harem king, that he'd never really thought about the nature of the power itself. This stranger, this Naruto, who had fallen into his life, spoke with the casual wisdom of an old man, yet looked no older than him. He was an infuriating, awe-inspiring contradiction. Well, just so you know, Issei said, puffing out his chest in a weak attempt to reclaim some dominance in his own bedroom. This is my house, so my rules. Rule number 1. Don't even think about making a move on Bushu or Akeno-san or any of the girls at school. They're all part of my future harem. Naruto blinked slowly. Then, a genuine, rumbling laugh escaped him. It was a warm, honest sound that filled the small room. You're an interesting guy, Issei Hyodo, he said, turning back to the ceiling. Don't worry about me, I have enough complicated women in my life already. Or had, he amended silently, a flicker of pain crossing his features before it vanished. He closed his eyes, letting the exhaustion of the day finally claim him. Issei watched him for a moment longer before lying back down, more confused than ever. The world he had just been introduced to was already more complex than he could have imagined. The next day at Kuo Academy was an immediate lesson in social dynamics. Rias had used a simple but effective hypnotic suggestion on the school administration, inserting Naruto Uzumaki into the student roster as a transfer student. When he walked into the classroom behind the teacher, a wave of whispers followed him. His blonde hair was brighter than Kiba's, his blue eyes more intense, and the faint, almost invisible scars on his cheeks, his whisker marks, gave him a rugged, mysterious appeal. He moved with a confidence that was neither arrogant nor loud, he simply existed, and his presence demanded attention. The girls in the class were instantly captivated. The boys, especially Issei's friends Matsuda and Motohama, were instantly consumed by a burning, impotent jealousy. Another pretty boy, Motohama hissed, adjusting his glasses. It's a conspiracy. Naruto took the empty seat beside a timid-looking, blonde-haired girl. She flinched when he sat down, as if expecting him to say something crude. He simply offered her a small, reassuring smile. I'm Naruto, he said. Asia Argento, she stammered, a light blush dusting her cheeks. It's nice to meet you. He felt it immediately. The gentle, warm aura around her. It was different from the demonic energy of Rias in her peerage. It was light, holy, yet tinged with a deep-seated sadness. He also sensed the foreign demonic energy inside her. A recent addition that sat uncomfortably with her natural essence. She was a transplanted flower, struggling to grow in alien soil. His smile softened. She reminded him of Hinata. In a way, the same gentle spirit that hid a surprising resilience. Throughout the day, he was a model student. He didn't know the first thing about modern history or advanced calculus, but he was a surprisingly fast learner. Absorbing information with the same intensity he applied to mastering a new jutsu. During the lunch break, as he was sitting alone on the roof, enjoying the breeze, Kiba approached him. "Mind if I join you?" the blonde knight asked, holding up his own lunch. "Be my guest," Naruto replied, patting the space beside him. They ate in a comfortable silence for a few minutes before Kiba spoke. "Rias told me a little about you," he said, his voice thoughtful. "She said you come from a world of warriors." "Something like that," Naruto confirmed. "We called ourselves Shinobi." "I can see it," Kiba said, his gaze distant. "There's a look in your eyes. I've seen it before in old comrades. The look of someone who has fought for their life, and for the lives of others." Naruto glanced at him. He saw it too. Beneath Kiba's charming, princely exterior was a core of tempered steel, forged in a fire of immense pain. He could feel the ghosts of old hatreds clinging to the knight's soul. "You've seen your share of battles, too," Naruto stated. It wasn't a question. Kiba's smile was tinged with sadness. "More than I would have liked. I'm grateful to Rias for giving me a new purpose." He looked at Naruto directly. "You are incredibly strong. Stronger than anyone I've ever met. But you don't fight for pride, do you?" "I fight to protect the people I care about," Naruto answered simply. "Pride doesn't keep anyone warm at night. It doesn't bring back the dead." The words hung between them, an acknowledgement of a shared, unspoken truth. Kiba felt a profound sense of respect for the man beside him. Unlike Issei, who craved power for personal gain, and unlike many devils he knew who sought it for status, Naruto wielded his immense strength as a shield. It was the heart of a true protector. "If you ever need someone to watch your back," Kiba said, offering his hand, "you can count on me." Naruto took it, his grip firm. "Same here, Kiba." Their moment of camaraderie was interrupted by the bell. As they headed back to class, Naruto knew he had found at least one person in this world he could understand, and perhaps, even trust. Later that afternoon, the Occult Research Club was hosting another guest. Sona, the student council president, sat primly on the sofa opposite Rias. Her entire peerage stood behind her, a silent, disciplined unit that was a stark contrast to Rias's more eccentric group. Sona's face was framed by a short, black bob, and her glasses perched on her nose, giving her an air of severe intelligence. "Rias," Sona began, her voice crisp and businesslike, "we need to discuss the unregistered power source that has taken up residence in your territory. Specifically, in the home of your newest pawn." Her sharp, analytical gaze fell on Naruto, who was leaning against a far wall, observing the proceedings with a detached calm. "Naruto-kun is my guest, Sona," Rias replied, her tone equally formal. "He is under my protection and my responsibility." "A responsibility you seem to be taking quite lightly," Sona retorted. The energy he expended last night caused a ripple effect that was felt all the way to the student council room. An output of that magnitude, appearing without warning, is a threat to the stability of this town. "We have an agreement, Rias. We share this territory. You do not get to introduce a stray god into the mix without consulting me." "He's not a stray god," Issei muttered from the corner, earning him a sharp glare from Sona's queen, the tall and imposing Tsubaki Shinra. "Let him speak for himself," Sona said, her attention fixed on Naruto. "Uzumaki-san, what is your purpose here? What are your intentions?" Naruto pushed himself off the wall and walked slowly toward the center of the room. The sensitive attention of two full peerages was focused on him, a weight that would have crushed a lesser man. He felt nothing but mild curiosity. "My purpose," he said, his voice filling the room without being loud, "is to figure out where the hell I am and how to get home. My intentions are to not be bothered while I do it." Saji Genshiro, Sona's pawn, a boisterous boy with a rivalry with Issei, scoffed. "You think you can just show up here and do whatever you want? You're in Citri and Gremory territory. You have to follow the rules." He puffed out his chest, a line of purple energy briefly appearing on his arm. Naruto didn't even look at him. His gaze remained locked on Sona. Rules are important, he acknowledged. But you seem to be making a lot of assumptions. You assume I'm a threat because you can't measure my power. You assume I'm your enemy because I'm not your ally. You're trying to fit me into a box that you understand. He took another step forward. Your problem isn't me, Sona Citri. Your problem is that your security is a joke. You felt my energy signature last night. That means anyone else looking for it could feel it, too. You're worried about me, a guy who helped save your rival's peerage. You should be worried about the ones who will come here looking for a fight. Sona's composure finally cracked. A flicker of anger flashed in her eyes. Are you threatening us? I'm giving you free advice. Naruto replied calmly. Saji, incensed by the perceived insult to his president, decided to act. Why you? He shouted, lunging forward. He didn't get 2 steps. One moment, Naruto was standing in the center of the room. The next, he was standing directly behind Saji, a hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. There was no flash of light, no magic circle, no gust of wind. No one saw him move. He was simply there. The entire room went dead silent. Saji froze, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He could feel it, the immense, bottomless ocean of power radiating from the hand on his shoulder. It wasn't malicious. It wasn't even threatening. It was just a fact, like the sky being blue or water being wet. A fact that stated, in no uncertain terms, that he could be snuffed out of existence before he could even blink. Naruto leaned in, his voice a low whisper in Saji's ear. Never start a fight you can't win. That's rule number 1 in my world. He removed his hand and stepped back, returning to his spot against the wall as if nothing had happened. The entire Citri peerage was staring at him, their disciplined facades shattered by a mixture of shock and primal fear. Sona's hands were clenched into fists in her lap. He had just demonstrated, without throwing a single punch, the colossal gap in their power. I see, Sona said, her voice tight. She stood up, her movements stiff. Rias, this guest of yours is indeed your responsibility. I trust you will keep him on a tight leash. She turned and marched out of the room, her peerage scrambling to follow her. The message was clear. She was retreating, for now. Rias let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She had won the confrontation, but not through her own power or influence. She had won because the hurricane she'd invited into her house had just flexed, and it had been enough to scare off one of the most calculating minds in the underworld. The tension in the room slowly began to dissipate. Akeno let out a low whistle. My, I think I'm in love. Kaneko simply nodded, stating, he's cool. Before anyone else could comment, the air in the center of the room began to shimmer violently. A pillar of swirling, golden fire erupted from the floor, licking at the ceiling. The heat was intense, and the demonic energy that poured out was thick with an unbearable, suffocating arrogance. A figure emerged from the flames, his crimson hair styled in a way that defied gravity, his face set in a permanent sneer. He was dressed in extravagant, noble-looking attire, and a smug sense of self-importance radiated from him like a physical force. Several scantily clad women, members of his own peerage, followed in his wake, preening and posing. My dearest Rias, the man purred, his voice dripping with condescension. Riser has come all this way to see you. Is this any way to greet your fiancé? Rias's face went pale, her body rigid with a mixture of anger and disgust. Riser, she spat, her voice laced with venom. What are you doing here? Tisk, tisk. Riser is hurt by your coldness, he said, wagging a finger at her. I am merely here to finalize the details of our glorious union. His eyes scanned the room, dismissing Rias's peerage with a contemptuous glance. Then, his gaze fell upon Naruto. He paused, his eyes narrowing as he sensed the unfamiliar, powerful presence. The idea of another male, an unknown one at that, standing so comfortably in his fiancé's presence was an intolerable insult to his pride. And what is this? Riser sneered, looking Naruto up and down. Rias, have you picked up another stray dog? You should really have it put down before it gets fleas all over the furniture. Rias's peerage tensed, ready to spring to her defense. Issei was shaking with rage. But Naruto didn't move. He had been quietly observing, taking in the scene. He saw the way Rias recoiled from this riser. He felt the possessive, arrogant energy pouring off the man. He recognized the look of a bully, a tyrant who used his power to torment those weaker than himself. He finally pushed himself off the wall, his expression unreadable. He met Riser Phoenix's arrogant, fiery gaze with a look of absolute, glacial calm. The air in the room, which had been superheated by Riser's arrival, suddenly dropped several degrees. The battle of wills had already begun. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Unbreakable Vow and the Immovable Object. Riser Phoenix surveyed the room with the dismissive air of a king inspecting a peasant's hovel. His gaze was a physical thing, Mayan possessive as it lingered on Rias, and contemptuous as it swept over her peerage. He saw them not as individuals, but as chess pieces, poorly chosen, weak, and ultimately insignificant. Only the strange blonde man standing against the wall gave him pause. There was an unnerving stillness to him, a complete lack of the fear or deference Riser expected from lesser beings. It was irritating. Riser has no time for games, Rias, he declared, taking a step forward. A wave of oppressive heat rolled off him. The date is set. The invitations have been sent. You will be Riser's wife. I will never marry you, Rias snarled. Her own crimson aura of destruction flaring to life, pushing back against his fiery presence. The two energies clashed in the center of the room, a silent, violent struggle for dominance. Riser laughed, a harsh, grating sound. You have no choice. The contract was signed by your father. It is a matter of honor between our great houses. A Gremory does not go back on her word. He began to walk towards her. His intentions clear. Issei and Kiba moved to intercept, their own demonic powers surging. Stay back, you mongrels, Riser spat. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a small, casual fireball hurtling towards them. It was a warning shot, a display of effortless power meant to intimidate. It never reached its target. Naruto moved. He didn't use the impossible speed he had shown against Saji. He simply took 2 deliberate steps, placing himself directly in the fireball's path. He didn't raise a shield or prepare a counterattack. He just lifted his hand, palm open, and caught the ball of fire. The flames licked at his skin for a moment before extinguishing with a soft hiss, like water on a hot stone. They left no mark, no scorch, no ash, nothing. Naruto looked down at his palm, then back at Riser, his expression one of mild disappointment. That's it? He asked, his voice calm. I've seen academy students with better fire control. The entire room went still. Riser's smug expression vanished, replaced by a flash of disbelief, which quickly curdled into rage. No one, ever, had treated his power with such blatant disrespect. You dare, Riser hissed, his body beginning to glow with a more intense heat. Do you have any idea who Riser is? I am a Phoenix. I am immortal. I am a high-class devil of the purest blood. You're a bully, Naruto replied, his voice still even, but now with an edge of cold steel. You walk in here, throw your weight around, and threaten a woman who clearly wants nothing to do with you. You're not a king. You're just a loud, spoiled child with a power you didn't earn. Every word was a perfectly aimed blow, striking not at Riser's body, but at the fragile, arrogant ego that was the core of his entire being. Riser's face contorted into a mask of pure fury. Riser will burn you to cinders. He roared, his body erupting in a column of golden flame. He will erase you from existence. Before he could unleash his attack, another presence made itself known. A familiar silver and blue magic circle appeared on the floor, and Grephia emerged, her expression as impassive as ever. The cold, disciplined aura she projected was like a bucket of ice water on Riser's inferno, forcing him to momentarily rein in his power. Lord Riser, Grephia said, her voice a monotone that carried an unshakable authority. Lord Searzex is aware of your visit. He has instructed me to remind you that any unsanctioned violence on this territory, especially against a guest of his sister, will be met with severe consequences. Riser grit his teeth, the flames around him receding, though his eyes still burned with hatred. He knew better than to challenge a direct command from one of the 4 great Satans, especially when it was delivered by Lucifer's own queen. Grephia, he bit out, struggling to regain his composure. This filth insulted the honor of the House of Phoenix. The matter of Ria Sajosama's engagement is to be settled in the proper way. Grafia continued, ignoring his outburst. As is her right, she may formally challenge the union through a rating game. Lord Phoenix has already agreed to this stipulation. Rias looked up, a flicker of desperate hope in her eyes. I demand a rating game, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Riser sneered, his confidence returning. A rating game. You wish to pit your pathetic, incomplete peerage against Riser's. He has a full set of 15 loyal, experienced pieces. You have this. He gestured dismissively at Issei, Kiba, Akeno, and Kaneko. Riser accepts your foolish challenge. It will be amusing to watch your servants be broken one by one before you. The game will take place in 10 days' time, in a specially created dimension, Grafia announced. The rules will be standard. The winner takes all. If you lose, Ria Sajosama, the engagement will proceed immediately. There will be no further appeals. The weight of the proclamation settled over the room. 10 days. 10 days to prepare a handful of rookies to face a veteran team with a supposedly immortal king. The hope in Rias's eyes died, replaced by a cold, familiar dread. It was an impossible task. Excellent, Riser purred, his victory seemingly assured. He shot one last, venomous glare at Naruto. Riser will enjoy putting you in your place, stray dog. And he will make sure Rias watches. With that, he and his entourage were consumed by another pillar of fire and vanished, leaving behind only the smell of ozone and the heavy silence of despair. The moment he was gone, the strength seemed to drain out of Rias. She sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. Akeno placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, but her own smile was strained. Kiba stared at the floor, his fists clenched. Kaneko was curled into a tight ball on her chair, and Issei was muttering curses under his breath, his own powerlessness a bitter pill to swallow. It's hopeless, Rias whispered, her voice cracking. His Irage. They've been with him for decades. His queen, Ubeluna, is a master of explosives. His knight can move at the speed of sound. And Riser himself, his immortality. Even if we could defeat his peerage, we can't defeat him. He just regenerates from any wound. So you're just going to give up? The question cut through the gloom like a kunai. Naruto was standing in the center of the room, his arms crossed. His expression one of profound disappointment. You haven't even fought yet, and you're already defeated. Is this the leader of the House of Gremory? Pathetic. What would you know about it? Rias shot back, lifting her head, her eyes flashing with anger. This isn't one of your simple brawls. This is a rating game. It's about strategy, politics, and power that you can't possibly comprehend. I comprehend that you have 10 days to prepare for a fight you can't afford to lose, Naruto countered, his voice sharp. I comprehend that your team is looking to you, their king, for guidance. And all you're giving them is despair. I've been in worse situations with less time and higher stakes. We didn't have time to cry about it. We had time to get stronger. He turned his gaze on the others, his eyes seeming to pierce right through them. You, he said, pointing at Issei. You have a weapon on your arm with the power to kill gods, but your body is weak and your mind is full of garbage. You can't even throw a proper punch. You're a cannon with a cracked foundation. He shifted his attention to Kaneko. You're strong, but you're holding back. There's a fire inside you that you're terrified of letting out. You're fighting with a cage around your heart, and it's crippling you. His eyes found Kiba. You're fast and you're skilled. But you fight with hatred. It makes you reckless and predictable. A true swordsman fights with a clear mind, not a clouded heart. Finally, he looked at Akeno. And you're the most powerful one here, besides Rias. But you're incomplete. You deny half of yourself. Half of your heritage. You fight with only one hand when you should be using two. That's not control, that's cowardice. The silence that followed was thick with shock and shame. He had stripped them down to their core weaknesses with brutal, unflinching accuracy. He wasn't being cruel, he was being honest. It was the harsh truth of a commander assessing his troops before a suicide mission. You're right, Kiba said softly, breaking the silence. He looked up at Naruto, his eyes filled not with anger, but with a newfound respect. Everything you said is right. Rias stared at Naruto, her own anger fading, replaced by a dawning realization. He wasn't mocking them, he was challenging them. He was trying to light a fire under them. So what? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. What can we possibly do in 10 days? Everything, Naruto said, a fierce, determined glint in his eye. It was the look of the knucklehead ninja who had defied fate, challenged gods, and brought peace to a world of war. It was a look of absolute, unshakable conviction. For the next 10 days, you're not going to be devils. You're going to be shinobi. I'm going to train you. I will push you until you break. And then I will build you back up, stronger than you ever thought possible. You will learn to fight not just with your power, but with your minds, your bodies, and your will. It will be the 10 worst days of your lives. He paused, a slow, confident smile spreading across his face. But at the end of it, you will win. There was no arrogance in his voice. It was a simple statement of fact. For the first time since Riser had appeared, a genuine spark of hope ignited in the room. That night, Naruto stood on the roof of the Hyodo residence, the cool night air a welcome relief. The deal was struck. Starting tomorrow, he would take charge of the Gremory peerage's training. Rias had relinquished command to him, a desperate gamble born of a lack of any other option. He closed his eyes, sinking into a meditative state. He reached out, not with his physical senses, but with the vast, world-encompassing senses of Sage Mode. Nature energy, thin as it was, flowed into him, sharpening his perception to an impossible degree. He pushed past the boundaries of the town, past the country, past the oceans, spreading his consciousness across the planet. He was searching for a tear, a seam in the fabric of this reality that might lead him back to his own. He found nothing. This world was solid, its walls impenetrable. The feeling of isolation returned, colder and more profound than before. But as he continued to listen to the silent hum of the planet, he felt something else. It was deep, deeper than the underworld, older than the concept of devils or angels. It was a slumbering consciousness, vast and utterly malevolent. It was a titanic, primordial hatred that dreamt of nothing but absolute destruction. It wasn't awake, not yet. But his arrival, the surge of 6 paths power he had brought into this world, had been like a stone tossed into a still, dark lake. Ripples were spreading, and something in the deep was beginning to stir. He pulled his senses back, a cold knot forming in his stomach. Riser Phoenix was a problem. The politics of this world were a problem. But they were small problems. They were the kind of problems he could punch. This was something else entirely. This was a Kagaya-level threat, a darkness that could consume everything. He opened his eyes, his gaze fixed on the moon. He was a long way from home. And his fight was far from over. The next day, he led the entire peerage to a secluded, mountainous area under the Gremory family's control. It was a harsh, rocky landscape, perfect for the hell he was about to unleash. They stood before him, dressed in training gear, a nervous energy buzzing between them. "All right," Naruto said, his voice echoing in the crisp mountain air. "Before we begin, I need to see exactly what I'm working with. All of you, at once. Your goal is to land a single, clean hit on me. You can use any power, any technique you have. Don't hold back. If you do, you'll only get hurt." Issei grinned, cracking his knuckles. "You got it." Boosted gear. The red gauntlet appeared on his arm. "Let's do this, guys." They exchanged determined glances. It was 5 against 1. How hard could it be? What followed was not a fight. It was a lesson. Akeno was the first to act, calling down a massive bolt of holy lightning from a clear sky. It was a devastating attack, powerful enough to vaporize the rock where Naruto had been standing. But he was no longer there. He was standing beside her, a hand gently tapping her on the shoulder. "Too slow," he said, before vanishing again. Kiba blurred into motion, his demonic speed carrying him across the field in an instant, his holy demonic sword aimed at Naruto's back. Naruto didn't even turn. He simply took a half step to the side, letting Kiba's momentum carry him past. He tapped 2 fingers against the back of Kiba's knee as he went by, and the knight's leg went completely numb, sending him tumbling to the ground. "Too predictable," Naruto's voice commented from somewhere else. Kaneko charged, her small fists empowered, cratering the earth with every step. She threw a punch aimed at his chest, a blow that could shatter steel. Naruto met it not with strength, but with finesse. He caught her wrist, using her own momentum to spin her around and send her sliding harmlessly across the dirt. You rely too much on raw power, he chided. Issei, having boosted his power 10 times, finally unleashed his dragon shot. A massive beam of crimson energy roared towards Naruto. Naruto simply held up a hand, and a swirling, transparent barrier of wind chakra appeared in front of him. The dragon shot splashed against it, dissipating into nothing. Power without control is worthless, Naruto said, now standing directly in front of a stunned Issei. He flicked Issei's forehead with his finger, and the boy went down like a sack of potatoes. Rias, seeing her entire peerage defeated in under 30 seconds, finally unleashed her own power. A massive sphere of the power of destruction, a terrifying orb of black and red energy that could annihilate anything it touched, formed in her hands. She launched it at him with a desperate cry. Naruto watched it approach. He didn't dodge, he didn't block, he simply took a deep breath, and a small, almost invisible Rasengan formed in his palm. He met the sphere of annihilation head-on. There was no grand explosion. The two energies met, and for a split second, they struggled. Then, the pure, rotational power of the Rasengan tore through the chaotic energy of destruction, unraveling it, causing it to implode on itself with a deafening implosion of sound. Naruto stood in the epicenter of the dissipated attack, completely unharmed, not a speck of dust on his clothes. He looked down at the 5 battered, exhausted, and utterly demoralized devils scattered on the ground before him. They hadn't landed a single blow. They hadn't even made him sweat. The gap between them wasn't a gap. It was a chasm. It was the difference between a child with a stick and a god with a sword. He walked into the center of the defeated group, his expression unreadable. They looked up at him, their pride shattered, their confidence gone. But in their eyes, there was also a desperate, burning question. How? Naruto finally smiled, a sharp, predatory grin. It was the smile of a teacher who was about to enjoy his work. Good, he said, his voice ringing with a newfound energy. You all failed spectacularly. Now you understand. Now, the lesson can begin. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. The Hell of a Shinobi's Making. The RST day of training began before the sun had even considered rising. A brutal, piercing whistle cut through the pre-dawn chill, dragging the Gremory peerage from their fitful sleep. They stumbled out of the simple barracks Rias had magically constructed, finding Naruto standing in the center of the clearing. He was dressed in simple black pants and a t-shirt, steam pluming from his lips in the cold air. He looked as serene as a mountain lake, an image that was violently at odds with the demonic glint in his eyes. Good, you're awake, he said, his voice devoid of any warmth. First rule of my training. Demonic power is a privilege, not a right. You have not earned it yet. For the next 3 days, its use is forbidden. You will rely on this. He tapped his temple, then his chest. Your mind, and your body. Issei. 500 push-ups. Now, Issei, who was still half asleep, stared at him blankly. 500. You're kidding, right? There's no way. Naruto appeared in front of him, a blur of motion in the dim light. His face was inches from Issei's, his blue eyes sharp enough to cut glass. Did I say you could talk? The only sound I want to hear from you is the sound of you counting. If you can't do 500, do 1,000. Start. The sheer, unadulterated command in his voice sent a jolt of fear through Issei. He dropped to the ground and began, his arms already trembling after the 10th push-up. The rest of you, Naruto called out, his gaze sweeping over them, will run. You will run up this mountain and back down. Then you will do it again. You will continue to do it until I say stop. Go. There was no room for argument. They ran. Rias Gremory, heiress to a great pillar of the underworld, ran alongside her peerage, her lungs burning within minutes. The incline was brutal, the terrain unforgiving. There was no magic to ease their fatigue, no demonic enhancement to power their muscles. There was only the harsh reality of their own physical limitations, a reality they had been allowed to ignore for far too long. This was the pattern for the next 3 days. Naruto broke them down to their most basic components. He was a relentless, merciless instructor. He forced them through grueling physical conditioning that pushed them to the brink of collapse, and then pushed them further. He restricted their diets to simple, high-energy foods and their sleep to a mere 4 hours a night. He was stripping away the crutches of their demonic heritage, forcing them to discover the warriors that lay dormant beneath. On the third day, as a physically shattered Issei lay on the ground, unable to move, Naruto knelt beside him. He slapped a single green leaf onto the boy's forehead. "What's this for?" Issei gasped, his entire body screaming in protest. "That's your new training," Naruto said. "Forget push-ups. Your body is reaching its limit for now. Your problem isn't your body anymore, it's your focus. You have power, Issei, but it's wild and uncontrolled. You just shout at it until it does something. That ends now." He tapped the leaf. "I want you to focus the energy inside you. Not your demonic power. The fainter energy, the stuff that makes you you. Push it out, just a tiny, steady stream, and make that leaf stick to your forehead. You will not eat, you will not sleep, you will not move from that spot until that leaf sticks." Issei stared at him as if he'd grown a second head. "Stick a leaf to my, but how? What does that have to do with fighting?" "It has everything to do with it," Naruto said, his voice losing its harsh edge for a moment. "The dragon shot you used the other day was like a fire hose without a nozzle. All power, no direction. Useless. This will teach you control. It will teach you to feel the power inside you, to shape it, to command it. Master this, and you'll be able to do more with your boosted gear than just make things go boom." For hours, Issei lay there, sweating with concentration, the leaf falling from his forehead again and again. The rest of the peerage, during their brief water breaks, watched him with a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. They were beginning to understand. Naruto wasn't just training their bodies. He was rewiring their entire approach to combat. On the fourth day, the real hell began. Demonic power was permitted again, but not in the ways they were used to. Naruto dragged them to the face of a sheer, 100-meter cliff. "Tree walking was for beginners," he announced. "This is the advanced course. You will channel a constant, precise flow of demonic energy to the soles of your feet and you will walk up this cliff." It looked impossible. Akeno, with her refined control, managed 3 steps before the flow of her energy wavered and she fell, caught by a gust of wind Naruto casually generated. Kiba, relying on his speed, tried to run up it, only to slam into the rock face and slide back down. Kaneko, with her raw strength, tried to punch handholds into the cliff, a tactic Naruto immediately forbade. "This is not about strength," he yelled at them. "It's about control, finesse. Your power is a wild beast you let off its leash. I am teaching you how to tame it, to make it an extension of your will. Try again." They tried again, and again. They fell, they cursed, they bled. But slowly, painstakingly, they began to learn. Rias, who was used to unleashing overwhelming force, found the exercise maddeningly difficult. Her power was designed to destroy, not to adhere. "Stop thinking of it as power," Naruto coached her from the ground. "Think of it as a part of you. Like your hand or your foot. You don't command your hand to grip, you just grip. Feel the rock, Rias. Become one with it." His words, strange as they were, began to sink in. She closed her eyes, ignoring the sheer drop below her, and focused not on projecting her power, but on feeling it connect with the stone. Her foot held. She took another step. It held again. A small, triumphant smile touched her lips. While the others were on the cliff, Naruto pulled Kaneko aside for a different kind of lesson. He led her to a small, secluded clearing. "Forget the cliff," he told her. "Your problem isn't control, it's the opposite. You're too controlled." He took a simple fighting stance. "Spar with me, no holding back." Kaneko nodded, her expression serious. She charged, her fighting style brutally direct. She was a powerhouse, each punch and kick carrying immense force. But Naruto met her with a fluid grace that was almost insulting. He didn't block her attacks, he redirected them, using her own strength against her, sending her stumbling. He never once attacked, only defended, moving like a leaf on the wind. "Is that it?" he taunted, easily sidestepping a punch that shattered the boulder behind him. "You're a Nekomata, aren't you? A monster born from myth." "Where's the monster, Kaneko? All I see is a little girl who's afraid of her own shadow." A flicker of anger crossed her face. "I'm not afraid." "Yes, you are." Naruto pressed, his movements becoming faster, more demanding, forcing her onto the defensive. You're terrified of the power inside you. The senjutsu, the yujutsu. You keep it locked in a cage because you're afraid of what will happen if you let it out. You're afraid of losing control. You're afraid of hurting people. He dodged under a roundhouse kick and appeared behind her. You're afraid of being what you are. His words struck a nerve, a deep, painful one. A raw, golden aura, completely different from her demonic energy, flared around her for a split second. Her speed doubled, her strength tripled. She spun, her fist aimed at his head, a genuine killing intent in her eyes. Naruto's smile was predatory. There it is. He didn't dodge. He caught her fist in his open palm. The shockwave from the impact flattened the grass in a 10-meter radius and cracked the very air between them. Her power was immense, wild, and beautiful. But he held it. He held it fast. The golden aura vanished as quickly as it appeared, and Kaneko stared at her fist, trapped in his grip, her eyes wide with shock and fear. That, Naruto said, his voice low and serious. That is who you are. Don't be afraid of it. Learn to command it. That power is not a curse. It is a gift. It is your strength. He released her, his point made. She stood there, panting, looking at her own hands as if for the first time. The next day was for the swordsman. Naruto faced Kiba in a small arena they'd cleared. Kiba held his demonic sword, his stance perfect. Naruto picked up a fallen tree branch. Kiba's brow furrowed. Are you mocking me? If I can't beat you with this, Naruto said calmly, then I have no business teaching you. Come on. Kiba didn't hesitate. He moved, a blur of speed, his sword a silver arc of death. The clang of his sword meeting the tree branch echoed through the mountains. The branch didn't break. Naruto met every single one of his strikes, his simple peak. Of wood moving with an impossible precision, deflecting, parrying, and redirecting Kiba's flawless technique. You're good, Naruto commented as they fought, his voice completely calm. Your form is perfect, your speed is incredible, but you're an open book. With a flick of his wrist, Naruto disarmed him, sending the demonic sword flying. Your hatred for holy swords is a gaping hole in your defense. You get so focused on the weapon. You forget about the man holding it. Your anger makes you predictable. He tossed the branch aside. Again. This time, blindfolded. What? Kiba asked, bewildered. You heard me, Naruto said. Procuring a strip of cloth. Your eyes are lying to you. They show you the ghost of your past in every opponent. I want you to learn to fight with your other senses. With your instinct. Feel my movements. Predict my intent. The lesson that followed was brutal. Kiba, blind and stripped of his greatest asset, was systematically dismantled. But as Naruto continued to press him, something began to change. Kiba stopped looking for Naruto and started feeling for him, sensing the shift in the air, the crunch of leaves underfoot, the subtle hum of energy. For the first time, he was fighting the battle in front of him, not the war in his memories. In the middle of the 6th day, a silver magic circle appeared at the edge of the training ground. Gremory stepped out, her expression unreadable. She had been sent by Searzex to report on their progress. What she saw astonished her. She saw Issei, sitting cross-legged under a waterfall, a leaf held firmly to his forehead by a faint, shimmering aura. His expression one of intense, unbroken concentration. She saw Rias and Akeno sparring, with Akeno seamlessly weaving bolts of holy lightning and demonic thunder together into a devastating barrage of attacks, no longer hesitating, no longer holding back her heritage. She saw Kiba and Kaneko fighting back to back against a small army of Naruto's shadow clones. Moving with a synergy and trust they hadn't possessed a week ago. This wasn't the training of devils. It was the forging of warriors. Naruto appeared beside her, his arms crossed. Come to check up on us. Lord Searzex is curious about your methods, Gremory stated, her analytical gaze fixed on the scene. They are unconventional. They work, Naruto replied simply. He looked at her, his gaze direct. You're the queen of the strongest Satan. Your power must be immense. Are you just going to stand there and watch, or are you going to help your family? Gremory was taken aback by his sheer audacity. No one spoke to her like that. But there was no disrespect in his tone, only a simple, logical question. My duty is to my husband, she said, her voice stiff. Your husband is Rias's brother, Naruto countered. Sometimes duty and family are the same thing. She's fighting for her freedom. A cause worth more than political alliances. He walked away, leaving her standing there, his words echoing in her mind. For the first time in centuries, Graphia Lucifuge felt a flicker of something other than cold, unwavering duty. She felt a spark of conflict. That evening, the exhaustion was absolute. They sat around a roaring campfire, nursing their aches and bruises, too tired to even speak. The animosity they'd felt towards their instructor had been burned away, replaced by a deep, grudging respect. They were changing. They could all feel it. They were stronger, faster, more focused than they had ever been. Asia arrived, escorted by one of Rias's familiars, bringing a basket filled with food and medical supplies. Her gentle presence was a soothing balm on their frayed nerves. As she tended to a cut on Issei's arm, she looked over at Naruto, who was staring into the flames, a familiar, distant look in his eyes. "You miss your home, don't you, Naruto-san?" she asked softly. Her question seemed to surprise him. He looked at her, and his usual mask of command slipped for a moment, revealing the lonely man beneath. "Yeah," he admitted, his voice quiet. "I do. You fight so hard for us," she continued. "For Rias-sama's freedom. Why, you don't owe us anything." Naruto turned his gaze back to the fire. He thought of his own long, desperate fight. He thought of Gaara, of Nagato, of Sasuke. He thought of all the people trapped by fate, by hatred, by systems they were powerless to change. "Because I know what it's like," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "To have your future decided for you by someone else. To feel like a pawn in someone else's game. No one should have to live like that." He looked at Rias, who was watching him from across the fire, her crimson hair glowing in the firelight. "Everyone deserves the chance to choose their own path. I lost my home once. I am not going to stand by and watch you lose yours." In that moment, they were no longer a king and her pieces under the tutelage of a mysterious stranger. They were comrades, bound by a shared struggle and a common purpose. They would face Riser Phoenix not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. For Rias, for themselves, for the man who was showing them what it truly meant to be strong. The 10th day dawned. The final day. Naruto stood before them. They were a different group from the one he had started with. Their eyes were hard, their bodies were honed, and a quiet, unshakable confidence radiated from them. "One final test," he announced. He slammed his palm on the ground. The earth groaned and trembled, and a massive figure rose from the stone and mud, a golem, 10 meters tall. Its body a swirling mass of raw nature energy. It was a crude imitation of a tailed beast, but it radiated an immense, overwhelming power. "This is your opponent. It's stronger and tougher than any of you individually. You will face it as a team, or you will be crushed. Show me what you've learned." The golem roared, a sound like grinding continents, and charged. This time, there was no hesitation. "Kiba, left flank, draw its attention," Rias commanded, her voice ringing with true authority. "Akeno, air support. Kaneko, with me. Issei, get ready." They moved like a single, cohesive unit. Kiba became a blur, his sword striking the golem's leg, not to do damage, but to divert its charge. Kaneko, with Rias beside her, met the golem's massive fist head-on. A flash of golden light flickered around her as she tapped into her senjutsu, her shout of exertion echoing through the mountains as she brought the colossal fist to a dead stop. "Now, Akeno," Rias yelled. From the sky, a spiral-ing vortex of black lightning and golden holy power descended, striking the golem in the back, causing it to roar in pain and rage. The attack was more potent, more focused, than anything she had unleashed before. The golem, enraged, swatted Kiba aside and focused its attention on Kaneko and Rias. It raised its other fist to bring it down and crush them. "Issei!" Rias screamed. "On it, Bushu!" Issei roared back. His gauntlet glowed, but he didn't prepare a dragon shot. The leaf, the waterfall, the endless hours of focus. It all came down to this. Boost, 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 boost. Welsh dragon. Balance breaker. For the first time, a magnificent suit of crimson dragon armor exploded into existence around him, sleek and powerful. But he didn't charge. He aimed his gauntlet not at the monster, but at his comrade. Transfer. A wave of pure, draconic power surged from him and washed over Kaneko. Her golden aura exploded, her strength multiplying tenfold. With a final, earth-shattering roar, she didn't just block the golem's fist, she drove her own through it, shattering its arm into a shower of rock and mud. The golem staggered back, its defenses breached. Rias saw her opening. Her hands glowed with the power of destruction. But it wasn't a wild, chaotic sphere. It was a thin, focused beam, a precise lance of annihilation. She aimed it not at the golem's chest, but at its neck, Seve. Ring the flow of nature energy from its head to its body. The light in the golem's eyes died, and its massive form crumbled into a lifeless pile of rubble. Silence. They stood there, panting, bleeding, covered in dirt, but victorious. They looked at each other, a shared look of disbelief and fierce pride passing between them. They had done it. From a nearby cliff edge, Naruto watched them, a rare, genuine smile on his face. The 10 days of hell were over. They were no longer Rias Gremory's peerage. They were Team Gremory, and they were ready for war. Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. A Devil's Game, a Shinobi's Rules. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of crimson light and demonic formula. One moment, they were standing in the familiar clubhouse. The next, they were on the grounds of Kuo Academy, bathed in an eerie, perpetual twilight. It was a perfect replica, down to the last cracked paving stone and withered flowerbed, but it was utterly devoid of life. The air was sterile, humming with the contained energy of a pocket dimension. This was the arena. In a separate, ethereal space, a viewing gallery had formed. Devil nobility, dressed in their finest, conversed in low tones, their Z's fixed on the massive projection screens that showed every angle of the battlefield. Lord and Lady Phoenix sat in a place of honor, their expressions ones of supreme, bored confidence. In a private chamber, Searsex Lucifer, the Crimson Satan, watched with a thoughtful smile, Graphia standing silently and professionally at his side. The stage was set. Rias Gremory stood with her peerage, the GHT of her family's honor and her own future pressing down on her. A week ago, this pressure would have crippled her. Now, it was a whetstone, sharpening her resolve. She felt a reassuring calm emanate from the small communication device in her ear. Status report. Naruto's voice came through, crisp and clear. He was miles away, in the strategic command room Rias had manifested for him, a nexus of smaller viewing screens that he could manipulate at will. He was not a piece on the board, he was the player moving them. All present and accounted for, Rias replied, her voice steady. We're in the main courtyard. Good. Riser will play this arrogantly, Naruto's voice continued, a calm river in the sea of their anxiety. He'll send his pieces to hunt you down one by one, expecting to overwhelm you with numbers and experience. We're going to use that against him. Phase 1 is a go. You know your assignments. Kiba, you're up first. On the other side of the campus, Riser Phoenix stood with his full peerage. He laughed, a sound full of arrogance. Go, he commanded them. Bring me Rias's servants. Make it entertaining. Riser will wait for the grand finale. His team, a group of 15 battle-hardened devils, fanned out. Their movements confident, almost lazy. They were hunters, the Gremory team were merely prey. Kiba Yuto moved through the empty school halls, a silent shadow. Hi's instructions were simple. Isolate and eliminate one of Riser's knights, Cyrus. According to their intel, she was a speed-based fighter, just like him. He heard her before he saw her, a faint whistle of displaced air. He ducked into a classroom just as a blur of motion shot past the doorway. Predictable, Naruto's training echoed in his mind. She relies on her speed to be her only defense. Kiba didn't give chase. He closed his eyes, his blindfold training taking over. He filtered out the sterile hum of the dimension and focused, sensing the faint demonic signature circling the area, searching for him. He took a deep breath, drew his sword, and waited. The door burst open. Found you, pretty boy. Cyrus taunted, lunging forward, her sword a silver streak aimed at his heart. Kiba didn't move to block. At the last possible second, he took a single step to his left. Cyrus's momentum carried her past him, her eyes wide with surprise at his calm. It was the exact opening he had been waiting for. He didn't counter with a flurry of strikes. He made one single, precise thrust. The tip of his demonic sword tapped her on the back of the neck. There was a soft chime, and a female voice echoed through the dimension. One knight of the House of Phoenix, retired. Cyrus froze, her body glowing with a soft blue light before she dematerialized from the field. Heba stood alone in the classroom, his breathing even, his mind clear. He had won not with superior speed, but with superior calm. Knight secure, he reported into his communicator. Proceeding to next checkpoint. From the command room, Naruto watched on his screen and nodded. One down. Meanwhile, Akeno was having her own kind of fun on the school's rooftop. She was facing 4 of Riser's pawns, who had cornered her, thinking she was an easy target. The Priestess of Thunder, all alone, one of them sneered. This will be easy. Akeno's usual playful smile was present, but it held a dangerous new edge. Era, 4 of you, you shouldn't have. They charged. A barrage of demonic energy blasts flew towards her. In the past, she would have countered with a massive bolt of lightning, a show of overwhelming force. But Naruto had taught her efficiency. Golden light, pure and holy, crackled in her right hand. Black and purple demonic lightning crackled in her left. She didn't unleash a storm. She wove a web. The holy lightning shot out, not as a bolt, but as a net, spreading across the rooftop. It wasn't powerful enough to cause serious damage, but its holy properties made the devils recoil in pain and disgust, their movements becoming sluggish and uncoordinated. As they stumbled, disoriented, she brought her left hand up. The demonic lightning didn't explode. It coalesced into 4 sharp, focused lances of pure energy. With a flick of her wrist, she sent them hurtling forward. Each lance struck a pawn dead in the center of their chest. 4 pawns of the House of Phoenix, retired. Akeno stood amidst the fading lights of the retired players. A perfect fusion of light and darkness. Target practice is over, Naruto-kun, she purred into her communicator. The tide of the battle was turning far faster than Anyo. Nay, in the viewing gallery had anticipated. Lord Phoenix's confident smile had begun to twitch. The situation escalated when Riser's queen, Yubeluna, finally took the field. She was a master of explosives. And she cornered Asia near the school's incinerator, cutting off her escape routes. Asia, whose role was to be the team's medic, had no offensive capabilities. A massive, swirling bomb of demonic energy formed in Yubeluna's hands. Its power crackling. It's a shame to eliminate such a cute little bishop, Yubeluna said with a cruel smile. But this is war. I could use a heal, Kaneko-chan, Asia said into her communicator. Her voice trembling but full of trust. The wall behind Yubeluna exploded inward. Kaneko Tuju stood in the breach, not as a small girl, but as a warrior transformed. Her black cat ears were sharp and alert, 2 sleek black tails swished behind her, and her eyes were slitted, glowing with a faint, golden light. A calm, powerful aura of pure senjutsu radiated from her, pushing back against the demonic pressure of Yubeluna's bomb. She hadn't lost control, she had seized it. You will not touch her, Kaneko stated, her voice a low, dangerous growl. Yubeluna, momentarily stunned, laughed. What's this? The pussycat wants to play. She hurled the bomb. Kaneko didn't dodge, she met it head on. She moved faster than she ever had before, a white-haired blur. She didn't punch the bomb. She leapt into the air, spun, and delivered a devastating axe kick from above, striking the very top of the explosive sphere. Her heel was coated in a thick, concentrated layer of senjutsu. The bomb didn't explode. The focused power of her kick destabilized its magical matrix, causing it to implode with a deafening whump. The resulting shockwave sent Yubeluna stumbling backward. Before the queen could recover, Kaneko was on her, landing a single, sharp jab to the solar plexus. The air rushed out of Yubeluna's lungs, and the system announced her retirement. One queen of the House of Phoenix, retired. Kaneko landed softly, her aura receding, though the ears and tails remained. She gave Asia a small nod before vanishing back into the shadows. She had faced the enemy's strongest piece and had won. Not with brute force, but with a controlled application of her true power. In the viewing gallery, the silence was deafening. The Gremory peerage wasn't just winning. They were systematically dismantling a veteran team with terrifying efficiency. Riser Phoenix, watching from his command post as his pieces vanished one by one from the board, finally lost his temper. His sneer was gone, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. Useless. All of them, he roared. He erupted in a pillar of golden fire, teleporting directly to the battlefield. He knew where Rias was. The king was always the ultimate target. Fine, if you want something done right, Riser must do it himself. He appeared in the courtyard, his fiery gaze locking onto the clubhouse where Rias was located. He blasted the doors off their hinges with a casual fireball and strode inside. Rias stood there, alone, her expression one of fierce determination. It's over, Rias, Riser bellowed. Your pathetic servants have been crushed. Surrender now and accept your place at my side. Not all of my servants are accounted for, Riser, Rias said, a dangerous glint in her eyes. From the shadows of the room, a voice shouted, "Boost." Closing square bracket quote. A figure shot out, clad in crimson armor. It was Issei, in his full balance breaker. He charged Riser head-on. Riser merely scoffed and backhanded him, sending him crashing into a wall. That pathetic dragon, he is nothing to Riser. He sneered. He wasn't supposed to fight you, Rias said, a slow smile spreading across her face. Issei, slumped against the wall, raised his gauntlet. It was glowing with an almost blinding intensity. He hadn't been boosting his own power. He'd been storing it. Transfer. An immense torrent of pure, draconic power, multiplied dozens of times over, surged out of his gauntlet and poured directly into Rias. Her crimson aura of destruction exploded, swirling around her with a violence that made the entire dimension tremble. Her hair whipped around her as if caught in a hurricane, and her eyes glowed with an incredible, terrifying light. Riser took an involuntary step back, his arrogance finally giving way to a flicker of genuine shock. The sheer density of the power rolling off her was staggering. My turn, Riser, Rias growled. She unleashed a wave of destruction. Riser met it with his own wall of golden fire. The two forces clashed, and he was driven back, his flames of regeneration working overtime to heal the damage the destructive energy was causing. It's useless, he shouted, his voice strained. Riser is immortal. You cannot defeat me. His regeneration isn't true immortality, Rias, Naruto's calm voice echoed in her ear. It's high-speed regeneration fueled by his demonic energy. It has a limit. Don't just attack him. Erase him. Rias understood. Control. Focus. Not a wild flood, but a piercing needle. She gathered all of the power Issei had given her, all of her own innate destructive might. She compressed it, condensing an ocean of power into a single, terrifying drop. It formed at her fingertip, a tiny, silent sphere of blackness that seemed to absorb the very light around it. This is for my peerage, she whispered. And for my future. She fired. It wasn't a beam or an explosion. It was simply a line of absolute nothingness that shot across the room. Riser raised his hands to block, his golden flames surging to their absolute maximum. The black line touched his fire. The fire vanished. It touched his hands. His hands vanished. There was no pain, no scream. Just a quiet, terrifying erasure. The line passed through his chest, and for a half-second, he stood there, a perfectly circular hole in his torso, before his entire body dissolved into motes of golden light. The female voice echoed one last time, with an air of finality. The king of the House of Phoenix, retired. The House of Gremory is victorious. The battle dimension faded away, and they were back in the clubhouse. Rias stood panting, the immense power receding, leaving her exhausted but standing tall. Her peerage was there, battered but beaming with pride. They had done the impossible. Naruto walked into the room from the side chamber he'd been using, a small, satisfied smile on his face. Not bad, he said simply. Rias looked at him, tears of gratitude welling in her eyes. She ran to him, throwing her arms around him in a fierce, desperate hug. We did it, she whispered into his shoulder. Thank you, Naruto. He stiffened for a moment, surprised by the contact, before relaxing and patting her gently on the back. You did it, Rias, he corrected her. You all did, I just pointed the way. In his private viewing chamber, Sears X Lucifer leaned back in his chair, a wide, genuine grin on his face. He had seen power and strategy before, but he had never seen anything quite like this. He had never seen a team so utterly transformed, so completely remade, in such a short amount of time. His gaze was fixed on the screen showing the blonde stranger who had made it all possible. "Graphia," he said, his voice full of a newfound, dangerous excitement. "Get me everything you can on Naruto Uzumaki. I think it's time my little sister's teacher and I had a talk." Chapter 5 End. Chapter 6. The Victor's Feast and the Satan's Gambit. Rias awoke to the gentle warmth of sunlight on her face. For a moment, she lay still. A sense of deep, bone-weary exhaustion mingling with a feeling she hadn't truly experienced in years, peace. The suffocating weight of her engagement, a shadow that had dictated her every move and poisoned her every joy, was gone. She was free. The realization washed over her, and a single, silent tear of relief traced a path down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. It was a testament to the battle she had won, a battle that would have been impossible without the strange, powerful, and infuriatingly calm man who had fallen into her life. The Occult Research Club was a chaotic, joyous mess. What was supposed to be a simple debriefing had devolved into a full-blown victory party. Issei, Matsuda, and Motohama had somehow procured an obscene amount of pizza and soda. And the room was filled with the sounds of laughter and cheerful shouting. Issei was regaling his two clueless human friends with a heavily embellished version of the rating game, casting himself as the valiant hero who had single-handedly saved the day. "And then, with my final ounce of strength, I transferred all my draconic power to the president," he declared, striking a dramatic pose. It was the ultimate sacrifice. Kaneko, who was perched on the arm of the sofa, took a slow bite of a chocolate bar. "You got knocked out by a backhand," she stated flatly. The room erupted in laughter, and Issei's face turned a shade of red that clashed horribly with his new armor's color scheme. Amidst the chaos, Naruto sat quietly in a corner, methodically working his way through a large meat lover's pizza. He observed the scene with a small, content smile. He had seen celebrations like this before, in the brief moments of peace between missions, between wars. The faces were different, the world was different, but the feeling was the same. The simple, profound joy of comrades who had faced death together and come out the other side. He felt a presence slide into the seat next to him. It was Akeno, holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to him, her smile more genuine and less guarded than he had ever seen it. "You're not one for the spotlight, are you, Naruto-kun?" she asked, her voice a low, pleasant hum. "The victory belongs to them," he said, gesturing with a slice of pizza. "They're the ones who fought. I was just the coach. You were the architect," she corrected him softly. "You gave us the blueprint for victory. More than that." Her gaze became more intense, her violet eyes searching his. "You pushed me to stop hiding. To use my father's power. No one has ever done that. They either feared it or coveted it. You just saw it as a tool. It's a part of you," Naruto said with a shrug. "Hiding from who you were is a waste of energy. Energy you could be using to protect your friends." Her smile widened. "Is that what this is all about for you? Protecting your friends? It's the only thing that's ever mattered," he replied, his voice simple and direct, carrying the weight of a lifelong creed. Before Akeno could respond, Rias clapped her hands, drawing the room's attention. Her face was flushed with happiness, her eyes shining with a light that had been absent for far too long. "I just want to thank all of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "My precious peerage, you were all so brave. You fought with everything you had, for my sake." She choked up for a moment, unable to find the words. She turned her gaze to Naruto, and the look in her eyes was one of profound, unadulterated gratitude. "And Naruto, I don't know what to say. You gave me back my future. The House of Gremory is in your debt. A lifetime supply of ramen would be a good start," he said with a grin, immediately breaking the heavy emotional tension. The room laughed, and Rias wiped a tear from her eye. Her own smile returning. The celebration was abruptly cut short by the familiar, shimmering manifestation of the Gremory teleportation circle. The joyous noise died instantly as Graphia Lucifuge stepped into the room. Her presence was a splash of cold, formal reality on their warm, informal party. "Rias Ajo-sama," she said, her voice the usual calm monotone, though Naruto thought he detected a faint, almost imperceptible warmth in her eyes as she looked at her sister-in-law. Lord Searsex sends his congratulations on your victory. Thank you, Graphia, Rias replied, her posture straightening. Her demeanor shifting from friend to noble heiress. Please convey my gratitude to my brother. He wishes to convey it to you himself, Graphia stated. Along with his gratitude to the one who made your victory possible. Her silver eyes moved from Rias to fix squarely on Naruto. Lord Searsex formally requests your presence at the Gremory castle in the underworld. He wishes to thank you personally. Quote, a heavy silence fell over the room. An invitation from one of the four great Satans was not a casual affair. It was a summons. It meant that Naruto's actions had sent ripples all the way to the very top of the demonic hierarchy. Naruto finished his slice of pizza, wiped his hands on a napkin, and stood up. He met Graphia's gaze without an ounce of intimidation. Does he think he can help me get home? He asked. The directness of the question seemed to momentarily surprise Graphia. Lord Searsex possesses a vast knowledge of dimensional magic and ancient lore. If there is a way back to your world, he is one of the few beings in existence with the resources to find it. That was all Naruto needed to hear. Punching bullies and training rookies was one thing. But his ultimate goal had not changed. All right, he said, I'll go. Rias immediately stepped forward. We'll all go. You are a guest under my protection. I will not have you face my brother alone. It was a declaration of loyalty, a promise that they were in this together. Graphia nodded, a flicker of approval on her face. Very well. Prepare yourselves. We will depart in 1 hour. With that, she vanished as quickly as she had appeared, leaving the remnants of the party in a state of tense anticipation. The game had just leveled up. Miles away, in the opulent, fire-themed capital of the Phoenix domain. The mood was far from celebratory. Riser Phoenix knelt on the marble floor of his father's throne room. The vibrant, regenerating flames that usually danced around him were gone. He looked diminished, broken. Lord Phoenix, a tall, imposing devil with a severe expression, stared down at his son, his face a mask of cold fury. Lady Phoenix stood beside him, her beautiful features twisted with disappointment. You did not just lose, boy, Lord Phoenix's voice boomed, each word a hammer blow to Riser's shattered pride. You were humiliated. You brought shame to our house. The entire underworld is laughing at us. A full peerage of veterans, defeated by a handful of children and a reincarnated human trash. It was the stranger, Riser stammered, his voice weak. The blonde one. His strategy, it was. Silence. His father roared. Excuses are the refuge of the weak. Your arrogance was your undoing. You underestimated your opponent. You played with your food, and it bit your head off. He paced back and forth. His anger a palpable force in the room. The Gremory girl is now a hero. And you are a laughingstock. Lord Phoenix stopped and looked down at his son, a dangerous glint in his eyes. This cannot be allowed to stand. The honor of our house must be restored. You will be sent away for re-education. You will learn the meaning of true power, not the parlor tricks of your bloodline. You will be forged into a weapon worthy of the Phoenix name. A dark, shadowy figure emerged from behind the throne, a being whose presence seemed to suck the warmth from the room. Riser looked up, and for the first time in his immortal life, he felt a sliver of true, mortal terror. The path to redemption his father was offering was not one of glory, but of pain and darkness. He had lost a game, and now, he was about to lose his soul. Later that night, before their scheduled departure, Naruto sat on the roof of Issei's house, the familiar quiet a welcome respite. He closed his eyes, extending his senses. Not outwards across the world, but inwards, into the vast, empty space where Kurama used to reside. The loneliness was a familiar ache now, a phantom limb he was slowly learning to live with. He decided to try something else. He entered sage mode, the natural energy of this world flowing into him. It felt different from the vibrant, life-filled energy of his home. It was thinner, tinged with the artificial energies of the devils and angels, but it was still there. He pushed his senses down, past the crust of the earth, past the ley lines of magic, searching for the deep, dark presence he had felt before. He found it. It was closer to the surface now, more active. His victory, Rias's surge of power, the dimensional tear of the raiding game, it was all acting like blood in the water. Drawing the ancient shark from the depths. This time, As his senses brushed against the slumbering consciousness, it stirred. He was no longer just sensing it. He was seeing it. In his mind's eye, a vast, chaotic landscape of crimson and black unfolded. A colossal form, larger than the 10 tails, shifted in a dream-like state. It had no discernible shape, only a mass of roiling, draconic limbs. Countless glowing red eyes, and a maw that opened into infinity. It was a being of pure, nihilistic apocalypse. It was the physical embodiment of the end of all things. And for a fraction of a second, one of those countless eyes snapped open and looked directly at him. Trihexa. The name was not spoken. It was imprinted on his soul, a wave of pure, cosmic dread and an overwhelming, soul-crushing despair. It was the beast of the apocalypse from this world's book of revelations. The 666. Naruto's eyes snapped open, and he gasped, a cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. He was back on the roof. The peaceful suburban night around him, but the image of that eye was burned into his mind. It had seen him. It knew he was here. The ripples he'd been making were no longer small. He had just sounded a dinner bell for a world-ending monster. Naruto-san, are you all right? He looked down. Asia was standing in the yard below, looking up at him with concern. The simple, honest goodness radiating from her was a stark contrast to the absolute evil he had just witnessed. It was a reminder of what was at stake. Not just his own journey home, but this entire, fragile world he had found himself in. He took a deep, steadying breath, pushing the terrifying image to the back of his mind. He had faced down a goddess who created chakra. He had stared into the abyss of hatred and pulled his best friend back. He would not be broken by a bad dream. He leapt down from the roof, landing silently beside her. "I'm fine, Asia," he said, offering her a reassuring smile. Just thinking. He looked towards the clubhouse, where the others were gathering for their trip. He was going to the underworld to meet a king, hoping for a way home. But a sinking feeling in his gut told him his path was no longer that simple. He was tied to this world now, whether he liked it or not. The slumbering god had seen him, and sooner or later, it would come looking for him. Chapter 6 End. C. Chapter 7. The Crimson Satan and the Golden Sage. The teleportation circle hummed with an unfamiliar energy, not the chaotic swirl of Riser's fire, nor the precise, icy glow of Graphia's magic, but a deeper, more ancient power. As Naruto stepped into it with Rias in her peerage, the world blurred into a wash of deep crimson and midnight blue. He felt a familiar pull, a spatial distortion that reminded him of Kamui, but this was grander. Smoother, almost effortless. When the light subsided, he found himself in a place that defied all his prior experiences. This was the underworld. The sky above was a canvas of deep, perpetual twilight, illuminated by swirling nebulae of purple and red, casting long, dramatic shadows over a landscape of impossible grandeur. Towering spires of obsidian rock pierced the heavens, adorned with intricate, glowing runes. Rivers of liquid light snaked through vast, crystalline plains, reflecting the strange sky. In the distance, colossal structures, half castle, half city, pulsed with a living, demonic energy, a stark contrast to the quiet suburbs of Kuo. The very air thrummed with raw power, denser and more ancient than anything he'd felt on Earth. It was magnificent and terrifying all at once. "Welcome to the underworld, Naruto-kun," Rias said beside him, a hint of pride in her voice, though her gaze was fixed on the sprawling Gremory castle ahead. It was a fortress of dark stone and gleaming spires, impossibly large and radiating an aura of immense power and history. Naruto simply nodded, his eyes wide, absorbing every detail. He'd seen the moon, been to other dimensions with Kagaya. But this was a whole world built on an entirely different set of rules. The scale of power, the sheer history etched into every stone, was palpable. He also felt it, beneath the grandeur. A faint echo of that crushing, primordial dread he'd experienced the previous night. The beast was here, woven into the very fabric of this demonic realm, closer, more active, even in its slumber. It made him wary. Graphia led them through ornate, echoing halls, past impassive devil guards in gleaming armor. The castle was a labyrinth of shadows and light, each corridor leading to another chamber of breathtaking scale. They finally arrived before a set of massive, intricately carved doors, flanked by more guards. The air here crackled with a different kind of power, refined, ancient, and undeniably regal. This was the throne room. The doors swung open silently. The room was vast, easily capable of housing a small village. A crimson carpet, woven with golden Gremory crests, led to a raised dais where a single, imposing throne of dark, polished wood and obsidian sat. Seated upon it was a man with vibrant, shoulder-length crimson hair, a mirror image of Rias, though his features were sharper. His eyes holding the wisdom and authority of centuries. He wore formal, elegant attire, his presence radiating an easy, almost casual power that nonetheless commanded absolute respect. This was Sears's Lucifer, one of the 4 great Satans. Standing beside him, looking just as regal, was a woman with long, flowing brown hair and kind, intelligent eyes. This was Venelana Gremory, Rias's mother. Though her gaze, too, held a potent, ancient power. Rias's father, Zeodicus Gremory, a man of quiet power and immense stature, stood opposite them, a proud, almost relieved smile on his face as he looked at his daughter. Rias, Sears said, his voice deep and resonant, a natural leader's voice. A warm, genuine smile lit his face as he watched his sister approach. My little sister, you've truly outdone yourself. Rias curtsied, her peerage bowing respectfully behind her. Brother, mother, father, it is good to see you all. There was a new confidence in her posture. A subtle but undeniable change that her family immediately picked up on. Sears's gaze then shifted, bypassing the peerage, and settled directly on Naruto. His eyes, the same vibrant blue as Rias's, seemed to peer into the very depths of Naruto's soul. There was no arrogance in his look, only a profound, intellectual curiosity. And this, Sears said, a small, knowing smile playing on his lips, must be the man who turned the impossible into a victory. Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto stepped forward, meeting the Satan's gaze without deference. He didn't bow or curtsy. He simply gave a slight nod. Sears Lucifer. He acknowledged, his voice clear and even. He felt no fear, only a respectful appraisal of a powerful being. Pleasure to meet you. Graphia, standing by the side, gave an almost imperceptible twitch. Such directness was unheard of from an unaligned visitor, especially before a Satan. A pleasure indeed, Sears replied, his smile widening. Please, step forward, you too, Rias, and your peerage. There's no need for such formality. This is a family gathering, after all. As they all moved closer, Sears leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped. He still regarded Naruto with that same intense, searching gaze. Graphia's reports, combined with the raw data from the rating game, have been illuminating. Your methods are entirely unorthodox, yet undeniably effective. And your power, it is truly beyond any category we possess. Naruto remained silent, allowing the Satan to speak. He understood this was a dance, a careful probing. We have reviewed the magical signatures, the energy expenditure, the sheer force of the blow that removed Riser from the field. Sears continued, a hint of awe in his voice. Rias's power of destruction, amplified by Hyodo Issei's boosted gear, was certainly impressive. But what truly fascinates me is the guiding hand. The precision, the intent. He paused, his gaze fixed on Naruto. You taught them to fight. Not just with their power, but with their wills. You instilled in them a kind of resolve that we devils, for all our might, often lack. They had it in them already, Naruto said, his voice flat. I just showed them how to use it. Modesty becomes you, Sears chuckled. But do not diminish your own impact. There are few beings in this world, or any other, who could accomplish what you did in 10 days. And Graphia, my own queen, could not even begin to accurately categorize your abilities. Tell me, Naruto Uzumaki, what exactly are you? I'm a shinobi, Naruto answered, his gaze unwavering. And my power is called chakra. It's the physical and spiritual energy of a living being, converted into something tangible. It's from my home world, a different dimension. Chakra, Sears repeated, rolling the word on his tongue. Fascinating. We have records of some incredibly ancient, esoteric forms of energy, but nothing quite matches your description. And your methods of using it, the clones, the sensory abilities, the sheer physical feats you've demonstrated. It's like a complete, self-contained system of warfare. He leaned back, a thoughtful frown on his face. And you say you wish to return home. My resources are at your disposal, if you truly desire it. We have mages, scholars, and explorers dedicated to understanding the intricacies of dimensional travel. But I must confess, a part of me hopes you might consider staying. Rias, who had been listening intently, stepped forward. Brother, Naruto-kun has been invaluable. He has shown us strengths we didn't even know we possessed. He is an honorable man. Indeed he is, Sirzex agreed, his eyes twinkling. Which brings me to my next point. Naruto, you are clearly not a creature of this world, nor are you bound by our laws or customs. Yet, you chose to intervene in a matter of profound importance to my sister. You could have stood aside. Why didn't you? Naruto thought of his answer from the previous night, about choosing your own path. He looked at Rias, then back at Sirzex. I don't like bullies, he said simply. And no one should be forced into a future they don't want. His gaze hardened slightly, especially when that future is with a man like Riser. A ghost of a smile touched Sirzex's lips, a subtle acknowledgement of Naruto's unvarnished opinion. Lord and Lady Gremory exchanged relieved glances. Naruto's forthrightness was a breath of fresh air after the veiled political maneuvering they usually faced. A noble sentiment, Sirzex said, and one that aligns with the true spirit of the Gremory house. However, your presence here, unaligned and with such power, creates a sensitive political situation. There are those who will see you as a threat, others who will see you as a prize. Some might even interpret your actions in the raiding game as a direct intervention in devil politics, which could have serious repercussions. Naruto folded his arms. I'm not interested in your politics. I just want to find my way home. And we will help you, Sirzex assured him. But until then, perhaps a more formal arrangement might be beneficial. For your safety, and for the stability of this realm. The devils are not the only faction. There are angels, fallen angels, the Norse gods, the Greek gods, many more. An unaligned force of your magnitude could accidentally tip the delicate balance of power. He paused, letting his words sink in. I would like to offer you a place, Naruto Uzumaki. Not as a servant, not as a piece in my sister's peerage, but as an honorary Gremory. A special advisor. You would be given a rank, resources, and the protection of one of the 72 pillars. In return, you would lend your unique counsel to my sister, and your strength, should the need arise, to the Gremory family. You would be free to come and go as you please, to pursue your search for a way home, but you would do so with the full backing and diplomatic immunity that comes with being affiliated with the House of Gremory. Quote, it was a brilliant gambit. Sirzex wasn't trying to capture Naruto, but to integrate him, to give him a legitimate place within their hierarchy. It removed the stray god designation, gave the Gremories an unparalleled asset, and allowed Naruto the freedom he clearly valued, all while keeping him within their sphere of influence. It also subtly acknowledged that trying to force Naruto would be a fool's errand. Naruto looked at Rias, whose eyes were wide with a hopeful, almost pleading look. He looked at her peerage, their faces reflecting a mixture of admiration and silent request. He had chosen to intervene for them. He had trained them. They were his students, in a way. He felt a connection. He also still felt the distant, malevolent hum of Trihexa. An alliance with a devil king, even a temporary one, might provide the resources and knowledge he needed to understand this world better, to understand the beast. It would buy him time. An honorary Gremory, huh? Naruto mused, a small smile touching his lips. So I get a fancy title, but still get to eat ramen and punch bullies. Sirzex chuckled. Indeed, you'd be afforded all the respect and privileges of a high-ranking noble, without the tedious duties. And yes, punching bullies is definitely on the menu. All right, Sirzex Lucifer, Naruto said, extending a hand to the Satan. You've got a deal, but on one condition. Sirzex raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Oh, and what might that be? You actually help me find a way home, Naruto said, his gaze serious. And if this Trihexa thing ever becomes a real problem, I want full disclosure. I don't like being kept in the dark about world-ending threats. A flicker of genuine surprise crossed Sirzex's face, a slight widening of his eyes. Only Graphia, standing nearby, noticed the subtle change. The name Trihexa was not common knowledge, even among high-ranking devils. For Naruto to not only know it, but to speak it with such casual seriousness, was deeply unsettling. He was not just powerful, he was observant, and aware of threats far beyond what he should have been. Sears recovered quickly, his smile returning, though it held a new depth of respect. Consider it done, Naruto Uzumaki. Full access to our archives, and anything else you require. Welcome to the family. He clasped Naruto's hand, his grip firm and powerful, an unspoken acknowledgement of their mutual strength. A tangible sigh of relief swept through Rias and her peerage. They had secured their powerful ally, and Naruto, for his part, had secured his means of investigation. The formal meeting concluded, and Sears invited them to a celebratory feast. The grandeur of the Gremory castle was on full display. The dining hall was immense, adorned with tapestries depicting ancient battles and legendary devils. The food was exquisite, a dizzying array of dishes that delighted the senses. For Naruto, it was a welcome change from military rations and instant ramen. Though he still longed for a proper bowl of Ichiraku's. During the feast, Naruto found himself seated between Rias and Akeno. He answered questions about his world with a practiced vagueness, carefully omitting details that might sound too outlandish or reveal the true extent of his power and his past. He watched the interactions, observed the nuances of devil society, learning more with every passing moment. He saw the way Rias's parents looked at him with profound gratitude, and the way Graphia, for all her professionalism, would occasionally glance at him with a strange, almost curious intensity. He saw the admiration in Kiba's eyes, the quiet respect from Kaneko, and even a grudging, less perverted awe from Issei. He was becoming a part of their world, whether he intended to or not. Later, as the feast wound down, Sears approached Naruto alone. He poured them both a glass of dark, aromatic wine, though Naruto still opted for water. "That name you spoke earlier, Naruto," Sears began, his voice low, his expression serious. "Trihexa. Where did you hear it?" Naruto took a sip of water. "I felt it. When I reach out with my senses, I can feel something ancient terrible slumbering beneath this world. Its name echoed in my mind." He met Sears' gaze. "I'm guessing it's not a campfire story." Sears sighed, a heavy weight settling on his shoulders. "No, it is not. The beast of the apocalypse, the 666. A being of pure, unadulterated chaos and destruction. It has been sealed away for millennia, a slumbering threat that we hoped would never awaken. Few know of its true nature or its name." He looked at Naruto, a profound respect in his eyes. "For you to sense it, to name it, it speaks volumes about your own power, Naruto. You are truly unique." "So it's real," Naruto stated. "Not a question, but a confirmation. And my coming here, my power, it woke it up, didn't it?" Sears nodded slowly. "Perhaps not woke it, but stirred it. The clash of energies from the war in your world. The dimensional breach, your own immense power entering this plane, it created ripples. And Trihexa, in its deep slumber, reacts to profound shifts in universal energy. Your actions, Naruto, have undeniably accelerated its awakening." The weight of the revelation settled on Naruto. He hadn't just accidentally landed in a new world, he had inadvertently put it on a path to apocalypse. He had escaped one world-ending threat only to stumble into another. "Then my search for a way home just got more complicated," Naruto said, his voice grim. "If I leave, and it fully awakens, then this world is doomed. I can't do that." He looked at Sears, his blue eyes burning with a fierce, familiar resolve. "So, Sears Lucifer, my deal with you stands. But my primary goal has shifted. Until that thing is dealt with, I'm not leaving. I'm going to make sure this world doesn't get consumed by some overgrown monster." Sears looked at the determined face of the blonde man, a man who, despite his own desire to return home, had just made a selfless decision to protect a world not his own. He was not a devil, nor an angel, nor any being they understood. He was simply a hero. "Naruto Uzumaki," Sears said, extending his hand once more, this time with a deeper, more profound respect. "It seems my sister has found us not just an advisor, but a guardian. And perhaps, a savior." As Naruto shook his hand, the gravity of his new purpose settled into his bones. His journey home was on hold. A new war was brewing, one far greater than any raiding game. And he, Naruto Uzumaki, the honorary Gremory, was now standing on the front lines of a multi-dimensional apocalypse. Chapter 7 End. Chapter 8. Echoes of the Past, Whispers of the Future. The weeks following the Gremory's victory settled into a deceptive rhythm of peace. For Naruto, Kuo Academy became a strange, surreal new battlefield, one fought not with kunai and jutsu, but with pop quizzes and the baffling intricacies of high school social dynamics. He was no longer just a guest, he was a fixture. In the occult research club, his presence had become a quiet, grounding force. He was the eye of their small hurricane, a point of absolute calm and unshakable strength that the others now orbited unconsciously. The training didn't stop, but it changed. The 10 days of hell had forged them. Now, Naruto was honing them. He would watch Issei practice maintaining his balance breaker, offering quiet corrections on his stance and energy flow, teaching him to use his draconic power not just as a weapon, but as an extension of his own body. He sparred with Kiba, not with overwhelming force, but with a patient, frustrating defense that forced the knight to think 3 steps ahead, to fight with his mind as much as his blade. He would meditate with Kaneko, guiding her in controlling the flow of senjutsu, helping her to embrace the calm, powerful center of her Nekomata heritage rather than fearing its wild edges. They were all growing, becoming more than just a Devil King's peerage. They were becoming a team. Naruto found a strange sense of satisfaction in it. It reminded him of his brief, chaotic time as a sensei to Konohamaru and his friends. He was a builder, a nurturer of strength in others. It was as much a part of him as the Rasengan. One afternoon, as the others were bickering over the last slice of cake Asia had brought, Akeno approached him. She moved with her usual seductive grace, but Naruto immediately noticed the tension in her shoulders, the faint, almost imperceptible tremor in her smile. "Naruto-kun," she began, her voice a little too bright, "could I have a word with you?" "In private," he nodded, following her out of the noisy clubhouse and into the quiet of the setting sun. They walked in silence for a few moments, the warm orange light casting long shadows across the school grounds. "I received a message," she said finally, stopping near an old cherry tree. She wasn't looking at him. Her gaze fixed on the horizon. It was from the Gregory. From a cadre class fallen angel named Kokobile. The name meant nothing to Naruto, but the title, Fallen Angel, and the strained way she said it, told him everything he needed to know. This was not a social call. They wished to discuss my heritage, she continued, her voice losing its playful lilt, becoming brittle. They noted my increased proficiency with holy lightning during the raiding game. They want to see me alone. Naruto's expression hardened. "It's not a request, is it?" Akeno let out a short, humorless laugh. "From the Gregory, never. It's a summons, wrapped in a thin veil of courtesy." She finally turned to look at him, and for the first time, he saw a flicker of genuine fear in her violet eyes. A vulnerability she so rarely allowed to surface. "My father, he's a fallen angel. A leader in the Gregory. My mother was a human priestess. I am an abomination to many on both sides. I ran from that world a long time ago. I don't want to go back." She was asking for advice, he knew, but her eyes were asking for something more. She was asking for a shield. "Where is this meeting?" he asked, his voice calm and even. A stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. "An abandoned church, on the edge of town. An old, consecrated ground they think is an amusingly ironic place to meet," she said, a bitter edge to her voice. "All right," Naruto said, as if she had just told him the time. "We'll go." Akeno blinked, surprised by his immediate, unquestioning acceptance. You didn't really think I'd let you go alone, did you?" he asked, a small, reassuring smile on his face. He turned and started walking back towards the clubhouse. "Rias and the others should come too. Not to fight, just to watch our backs. No one faces a summons alone. Not on my watch." Akeno watched him walk away, a warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with demonic power. For years, she had hidden her pain behind a mask of flirtation and sadism, keeping everyone at a distance. But this man, this stranger from another world, had seen right through it from the very beginning. And he wasn't running away. He was walking right into the fire with her. The abandoned church stood silhouetted against the blood-red twilight sky, a skeletal ruin of forgotten faith. Its steeple was broken, its stained glass windows were shattered, and an aura of decay and corrupted holiness clung to it like a shroud. Rias and her peerage took up hidden positions in the overgrown graveyard surrounding the building, their senses on high alert. Naruto had been clear. They were observers, an emergency extraction team, nothing more. This was Akeno's fight, and his to support. Naruto and Akeno walked up the crumbling stone steps and pushed open the heavy, groaning doors. The interior was a cavern of shadows, dust motes dancing in the faint beams of light that pierced the gloom. At the far end, standing before the desecrated altar, was a figure of immense, terrifying power. He was a man with long, wild black hair and a cruel, handsome face. But what commanded attention were the wings. 10 massive, feathered wings, black as a starless night, fanned out behind him, each one radiating a potent, ancient malice. This was Kokobile. His demonic energy was laced with a corrupted holy light, a combination that was jarring and deeply unsettling. He was not alone. To his right stood a man with manic, crazed eyes and bleached blonde hair, dressed in the tattered robes of a priest. He giggled to himself, licking the blade of a shimmering sword made of pure, condensed light. To Kokobile's left was a hulking figure in archaic, heavy armor, holding a massive, jagged spear. The air around them was thick with bloodlust. Akeno Himahima, Kokobile's voice boomed, echoing through the nave. It was a voice accustomed to commanding armies, a voice that reveled in war. The daughter of Barakil, you have your father's power, but your mother's weakness. I see you've brought a pet with you. His cold, dismissive gaze slid over Naruto, judging him to be nothing more than a bodyguard, a devil's servant. Akeno's hands clenched, her knuckles white. The mention of her father's name was like a knife in her heart. What do you want, Kokobile? Want? Kokobile chuckled, a sound like grinding stones. I want an end to this insipid, boring peace. I want the thrill of battle, the glorious symphony of war. The last great war, it ended too soon. But with God dead and the Satan's playing house, there's a power vacuum. A perfect opportunity to start again. To finish what we started. He spread his arms wide, his wings rustling. I came here to collect a few things. The stolen Excaliburs. And you. His eyes narrowed, focusing on Akeno with a predatory intensity. Your display in the raiding game was intriguing. A perfect fusion of light and darkness. You are a weapon, girl. A weapon I intend to use. But first, you need to be broken of these foolish loyalties. He smiled, a cruel, vicious expression. You know, I was there, the day your mother died. Shuri Himahima, a lovely woman, such a waste. I was the one who gave the order. A little field experiment, you see. To see how a half-breed would react under extreme emotional distress. To see if the trauma would awaken your true power. Her death was a necessary catalyst for your development. Quote, the world seemed to stop. The air rushed out of Akeno's lungs. The carefully constructed walls she had built around her heart for a decade, the fortress of smiles and sadism, shattered into a million pieces. All the pain, all the repressed grief, all the burning hatred she had buried deep inside, erupted in a single, devastating moment. You, she whispered, her voice a broken, trembling thing. Then she screamed. It was not a scream of fear, but of pure, undiluted rage. A storm of unimaginable power exploded from her. Golden holy lightning and black demonic thunder, no longer separate, but fused into a swirling vortex of violet destruction, tore the church apart. The pews were vaporized, the stone floor cracked, the roof was ripped from its rafters. She rose into the air, a goddess of vengeance wreathed in a tempest of her own making. I'll kill you, she shrieked, unleashing the full, unrestrained fury of her soul upon the fallen angel who had taken everything from her. The crazed priest, Fried Selzen, cackled with glee. Oh, a light show. Can I play? He lunged towards Naruto, his light sword held high. Die, devil scum. The armored warrior, Valpier Galilei, moved to intercept as well, his massive spear aimed at Naruto's chest. They were flies, swatting at a mountain. Naruto didn't even look at them. As Fried's sword swung down, Naruto's hand shot out. catching the blade between his thumb and forefinger. The holy light sputtered and died against his skin. With a simple, almost casual squeeze, he shattered the blade of pure energy into 1,000 glittering shards. He then delivered a single, precise chop to Freed's neck, and the exorcist crumpled to the ground, unconscious. Valper's spear was met with an open palm. Naruto stopped the charge of the massive, armored warrior dead in its tracks. He then channeled a gentle pulse of sage chakra into the armor. The ancient metal, unable to contain the pure, natural energy, exploded outwards, sending Valper flying backward, stripped of his protection and knocked senseless. The two threats were neutralized in less than 3 seconds. His full attention was on the real battle. Akeno's barrage was magnificent, a storm that could level a city. But Kokobile stood in the epicenter, a smirk on his face, effortlessly deflecting every bolt with a casual wave of his hand. He was a cadre, a veteran of the Great War. Her raw power was immense, but it was unfocused, driven by rage. It was like a child throwing stones at a battleship. "Is that all, little half-breed?" Kokobile taunted, growing bored. Pathetic. He formed a spear of pure, dark light in his hand and hurled it at her. It cut through her storm like a hot knife through butter, aimed directly at her heart. She was too lost in her rage to react in time. But the spear never reached her. One moment, Naruto was on the ground. The next, he was in the air, standing between Akeno and the spear, his back to her. He caught the spear of darkness in his bare hand. It struggled against his grip for a moment before dissolving into harmless particles of light. The atmosphere in the ruined church shifted instantly. The oppressive, chaotic energy of the battle was swept away, replaced by something else. Something ancient, divine, and absolutely absolute. "That's enough," Naruto said, his voice quiet, yet it carried over the roar of Akeno's dwindling storm. He turned his head slightly, his gaze falling on Akeno. "He's mine now." He faced Kokobile, and his transformation began. A brilliant, golden aura erupted around him, so pure and powerful that it made Kokobile's corrupted light seem dim and filthy. The whisker marks on his cheeks became thick and black, the pigmentation around his eyes turned a vibrant orange. And his pupils shifted into the cross-like pattern of the Sage of Six Paths. 9 black, ethereal orbs, the truth-seeking orbs, materialized behind him, humming with the power to negate all creation. The pressure of his presence was suffocating. It was not demonic, it was not holy. It was the raw, unfiltered power of life itself, of the planet, of the universe, focused into a single, incandescent being. Kokobile's arrogant smirk finally vanished, replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. What are you?" he stammered, his 10 wings flaring instinctively. Naruto didn't answer with words. Kokobile, recovering his nerve, roared and gathered a massive amount of light and dark energy, compressing it into a swirling sphere of destruction above his head. It was an attack that could have wiped Kuo Town off the map. "It doesn't matter, I'll just erase you." He launched the attack. Naruto simply raised a hand. One of the truth-seeking orbs floated forward, meeting the massive sphere of energy. There was no explosion. The orb, a manifestation of absolute void, simply touched the attack, and Kokobile's ultimate technique was unmade, absorbed into nothingness as if it had never existed. Kokobile stared, his mind unable to process what he had just seen. Before he could react, Naruto was in front of him. His speed wasn't just fast, it was conceptual. He had simply decided to be there, and so he was. He delivered a single, simple punch to Kokobile's gut. The punch carried the weight of a mountain. Kokobile's eyes bulged, the air driven from his lungs in a silent scream. The armor of light he wore shattered like glass. He was sent rocketing backward, not just through the remains of the church, but through the very fabric of the localized space, crashing into the tree line a mile away. The impact carving a massive trench in the earth. Naruto appeared above him as he struggled to rise, his wings torn and broken. "You talk about war," Naruto said, his golden form illuminating the crater, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "You have no idea what war is. You're just a child playing with firecrackers." He raised his hand, and a new technique swirled into existence, a Rasenshuriken. But one infused with the power of 6 paths. It was a miniature, spinning galaxy of unimaginable destructive power. It whined with a sound that seemed to cut reality itself. It was in that moment that Kokobile knew. He wasn't facing a devil, or an angel, or some new kind of monster. He was facing a god. A god of a caliber he had never imagined. And he was going to die. But as Naruto prepared to throw the attack that would utterly erase the fallen angel from existence, Akeno's voice, weak and trembling, called out from behind him. Naruto, stop. He paused, the spinning shuriken of doom held in his hand. He turned to see her. Her storm gone, her power exhausted, tears streaming down her face. Rias and the others had arrived, standing around her, their faces pale with awe and terror at the power he had unleashed. Don't kill him, Akeno whispered. Don't become a monster, for my sake. Naruto looked at her, then back at the broken, terrified form of Kokobile. He held the power to end him, to deliver the vengeance she deserved. But he saw the look in her eyes. She didn't want vengeance. She wanted peace. She wanted the killing to stop. With a deep sigh, the golden aura receded. The Rasenshuriken dissipated into nothing. His eyes returned to their normal, brilliant blue. He turned his back on Kokobile, a sign of ultimate contempt, and walked back towards Akeno. He knew that others, Searsex and the Seraphs, would deal with the renegade fallen angel now. His message had been sent. So, a new voice, full of amusement and immense power, echoed through the crater. This is the Gremory's new secret weapon. A figure appeared in a flash of white light. He was a handsome man with silver hair, dressed in white armor, with 12 brilliant golden wings. Beside him, in a blur of motion, was a small boy with white hair, also with wings, holding a glowing spear. It was the White Dragon Emperor, Valley Lucifer. And with him was the Seraph Michael's Joker, a powerful figure from heaven. They were the cleanup crew. Naruto ignored them. He reached Akeno just as her strength finally gave out. Her rage spent, her emotional walls completely gone, she collapsed. He caught her, holding her gently. She buried her face in his chest, and the sobs she had held back for a decade finally broke free, raw and heart-wrenching. He didn't speak. He didn't offer empty words of comfort. He just held her, a silent, unmovable pillar of strength in the ruins of her past, letting her finally grieve. As he looked up at the twilight sky, at the angels and devils who were now converging on the scene, he knew that Kokobile was right about one thing. This did change things. He had revealed a fraction of his true power. He had made enemies of those who craved war, and he had made himself a person of immense interest to the powers that craved peace. His quiet life was over. The whispers of a coming war were growing louder. And he was standing right in the middle of it. Chapter 8 End. Chapter 9. The Summit of Kings and the Shadow of the Dragon. The Kokobile incident, as it came to be known, was a stone dropped into the deceptively calm waters of the supernatural world. And the ripples spread with alarming speed. News of a single, unknown entity defeating a Cadre-class fallen angel with contemptuous ease, neutralizing two powerful Excalibur wielders, and display in a form of power that defied all known classification, sent shockwaves through every faction. Suddenly, Naruto Uzumaki was no longer a Gremory secret or a curious anomaly. He was a global strategic factor. This new reality became starkly clear a week later. Naruto was in the clubhouse, attempting to explain the concept of chakra control to a frustrated Issei by having him try to walk on water in a magically conjured kiddie pool. When Searsex Lucifer and Graphia appeared in their customary flash of crimson light, Searsex's usual easy-going smile was gone, replaced by an expression of grave seriousness. Naruto, he began, foregoing any pleasantries, we need to talk. A situation has developed. He explained that Kokobile's unsanctioned attack, coupled with the theft of several Excalibur fragments, had brought the simmering tensions between the three factions, devils, angels, and fallen angels, to a boiling point. To avert a full-scale war, a summit had been called. For the first time in centuries, the leaders of all three sides would meet on neutral ground to negotiate a formal peace treaty. The chosen location, Huo Academy. You want to hold a peace summit in the middle of a high school? Issei asked, falling out of the pool with a splash. It is precisely because it is a place of peace and learning that it was chosen, Searsex explained. A symbol of the future we are trying to build. But symbols are fragile. He turned his full attention to Naruto. The leader of the fallen angels, Azazel, and the Seraph Michael of Heaven, have both made their attendance conditional. They will only come if you are present. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Me, why? Because you are the ultimate unknown, Searsex said, his gaze intense. You are a power unbound by our histories, our grudges, and our rules. To them, you represent both a potential threat and a potential guarantor of any peace we forge. They want to see you, to measure you for themselves. Azazel, in particular, is a Oler of sacred gears and unique power systems. He is intensely curious about you. So I'm to be a show pony, Naruto stated flatly, unimpressed. You are to be a deterrent, Grafia corrected him, her voice sharp. Your presence alone will force all parties to be honest. No one will risk treachery with a being of your caliber in the room. Naruto considered it. He had no interest in their politics. But he had a vested interest in preventing a war that would undoubtedly cause immense suffering and further destabilize a world already threatened by a slumbering apocalypse. A war would be a feast for a creature like Trihexa. Fine, he said, I'll be there. But I'm not a politician. I'm not making any speeches. Your presence will be speech enough, Searsex replied, a hint of relief in his voice. The day of the summit arrived, and Kuo Academy was transformed. Powerful barriers, woven by the most skilled mages of all three factions, enveloped the school, making it invisible and intangible to the human world. The atmosphere was thick with a tense, crackling energy, a mixture of holy light, demonic power, and the unique aura of the fallen. The meeting was held in the Occult Research Club's main room, which had been magically expanded and reconfigured into a formal conference chamber. A large, circular table stood in the center. Rias and her peerage, along with Sona Cetres, stood guard. Their expressions grim and determined. They were the honor guard for the devil faction. The first to arrive were the angels. A golden magic circle illuminated the room, and from it stepped Michael. The seraph who had taken God's place as the leader of heaven. He had the face of a beautiful man, framed by long, blonde hair, and 12 golden wings that radiated a gentle, comforting warmth. Him was the beautiful but stoic Gabriel, and Irina Shido, a childhood friend of Issei's who had become a reincarnated angel, her face a mixture of awe and nervousness. Michael's eyes, full of an ancient, weary kindness, immediately found Naruto, who was standing quietly in a corner of the room. He offered a small, respectful nod. Next came the fallen angels. A dark, shadowy circle appeared, and Azazel strode out. He looked less like a biblical entity and more like a laid-back rock star, dressed in a black trench coat over a casual shirt, his black hair shot through with streaks of gold. He had 12 black wings. But his aura was not malicious like Kokobeel's. It was one of intense curiosity and a hint of weary cynicism. With him was the White Dragon Emperor, Valley Lucifer, who smirked the moment he saw Issei. A silent promise of a future battle hanging between them. Azazel's gaze, however, shot straight to Naruto, his eyes lighting up with the unabashed glee of a scientist who had just discovered a new element. Finally, Searsex and Grafia arrived, representing the devils. The leaders of the three factions were all present. The air was so thick with power and history you could cut it with a knife. The summit began, and it was a tedious, frustrating affair. Old grievances were aired, accusations were leveled, and the fragile peace seemed ready to shatter at any moment. Naruto listened with a detached patience. His arms crossed. He understood the dynamics instantly. They were all trapped by their past, unable to fully trust one another because of wars fought millennia ago. Azazel, true to his reputation, was the most direct. Look, Michael, Searsex, he said, leaning back in his chair. Let's be honest. Kokobeel was a warmongering fool, and I've dealt with him. But he was a symptom of the real problem. We're all bored. The old fire is gone, and some of my people miss it. We need a new project, something to focus on besides our old grudges. His eyes flickered to Naruto. And our new friend here has brought a fascinating new variable into the equation. His energy, it feels like the world before it was divided. Pure, primal, it's the key to something. As at that moment that the carefully woven barriers around the school shattered. The blast of magical energy was immense, and it came from outside. The room was plunged into chaos as every leader's personal guard moved to protect them. Alarms blared through the magical communication network. "Report," Sears commanded, his voice booming with authority. Sona Citri's face appeared on a magical projection screen. "We're under attack. It's a massive force of magicians. They're everywhere." Suddenly, time itself seemed to freeze. Everyone in the room, from the mighty Sears to the neophyte Issei, was locked in place. Unable to move, a young man with glasses and a gentle smile walked into the room, stepping out of a distortion in space. He wore the Kuo Academy uniform. It was the leader of the Chaos Brigade's magician faction, Cateriel Leviathan's second in command. Only one person in the room was unaffected by the time-stop magic. Naruto stood in his corner, the golden aura F6 Paths Sage mode flaring to life around him, effortlessly negating the spell. The magician's smile faltered, his eyes widening in disbelief as he stared at the being who was immune to his ultimate technique. "That's a neat trick," Naruto said, his voice dangerously calm. He took a step forward, the floor cracking under the sheer pressure of his presence. "But you've interrupted a very important, very boring meeting." Before the magician could even react, Naruto was in front of him. He didn't punch him. He didn't use a jutsu. He simply placed a hand on the magician's forehead, and a seal, a complex swirl of black ink, spread across the young man's body. The time-stop spell shattered. The magician looked down at his body, a look of pure terror on his face. He could feel his own magic being completely, utterly sealed away. He was powerless. What are you?" he gasped. "The guy who's about to end your little party," Naruto said, before tapping him on the neck, knocking him unconscious. As time resumed, the leaders looked around in confusion, the last few seconds a blur. They only saw the magician on the floor and Naruto standing over him, his golden aura slowly receding. "We have a problem," Naruto stated, looking at Sears. "A big one." The doors to the room burst open, and a swarm of magicians in dark robes poured in, their hands alight with destructive energy. They were the shock troops of the Chaos Brigade. But they were met with a wall of power. "You dare interrupt a summit of kings?" Sears' voice was low, but it held the chilling promise of utter annihilation. His body erupted in the crimson aura of the power of destruction, but it was 1,000 times denser, 1,000 times more terrifying than Rias's. It wasn't a wild force. It was a calm, controlled ocean of absolute erasure. Michael's 12 golden wings flared, and a spear of pure, blindingly white light formed in his hand. Azazel grinned, and his own spear of dark light appeared, crackling with power. The three leaders stood shoulder to shoulder, their ancient rivalries forgotten in the face of a common enemy. The sheer pressure of their combined auras was enough to make the very dimension tremble. The invading magicians froze, their attack faltering as they realized the colossal, fatal mistake they had just made. But the real threat wasn't in the room. Naruto's head snapped up, his sage senses screaming a warning. It was a presence he had felt before. A deep, ancient hatred. It wasn't Trihexa, not the beast itself, but an echo of it. A descendant. He vanished from the room, pairing on the school's athletic field in a flash of gold. The battle outside was raging. Rias's peerage and Sona's were fighting valiantly against a horde of magicians, but they were being pushed back. In the center of the field, a massive, shadowy form was materializing. It was a dragon, a grotesque, twisted mockery of a dragon, with scales of shadow and eyes that burned with a cold, green fire. It was a being of immense evil, and clinging to its back was a figure Naruto recognized with a jolt of surprise. It was Valpier Galilei, the armored warrior from the church, the man who had helped Kokabile. He was holding a sphere that contained the fused Excalibur fragments. "Fools!" Valpier screamed, his voice amplified by magic. "You seek peace, when the true god is hatred. The true god is conflict. Behold the fruit of my research. The fusion of a dragon's soul with the holy power of Excalibur. A new god for a new age of war." But as he held the sphere aloft, something went wrong. A new presence, one of immense, draconic power, made itself known. Vanishing Dragon. Valley Lucifer appeared in the sky, his white divine dividing armor gleaming. His eyes were fixed on the shadowy dragon. "That power, it doesn't belong to you," he said, his voice cold. At the same time, Issei, who had followed Naruto outside, felt the boosted gear on his arm begin to pulse with a furious, uncontrollable energy. A deep, ancient voice. A voice that was not his own, echoed in his mind. Albion. Valley's armor responded in kind. DDRAIG. The two heavenly dragons, the eternal rivals, were reacting to something. Not to each other, but to the twisted dragon on the field. The shadow dragon roared, and from its body, a third voice, a voice of pure, soul-devouring evil, echoed across the battlefield. Opening square bracket ... Guinevere, I have come for you, my beautiful son. The words were nonsense, ancient and mad, but the raw, negative emotion behind them was overwhelming. It was a wave of pure, possessive obsession and soul-crushing despair. It was in that moment that Naruto, Circex, Michael, and Azazel, who had now all arrived on the field, understood the true nature of the threat. This wasn't just a magician's rebellion. They had found and weaponized the soul of an evil dragon, one of the legendary beasts born from Trihex's first dream. A being of immense power and bottomless malice. Valpier, realizing he had lost control of his creation, began to scream as the shadow dragon's energy consumed him. The beast was now free, its mad, green eyes fixing on the strongest sources of life on the field, the leaders of the three factions. The real battle of the Peace Summit was about to begin, and the shadow of the apocalypse was looming closer than ever before. Chapter 9 End. Chapter 10. The Apocalypse Dragon's First Roar. The Peace Summit was over. The war had begun. The creature that had erupted on the school grounds was a perversion of nature, a dragon born from shadow and madness. Its roar was not a sound, but a psychic assault. A wave of ancient, obsessive despair that clawed at the minds of everyone present. Its corrupted, wholly demonic energy was a tangible miasma, poisoning the very eye. And causing the carefully constructed reality of the pocket dimension to flicker and distort. For a split second, everyone was frozen, not by magic, but by the sheer, unholy presence of the evil dragon. The combined might of the three factions was gathered on this field, and for a heartbeat, it felt like it wasn't enough. Then, one voice cut through the encroaching madness, clear and absolute as a blade's edge. Rias. Naruto's voice rang out, devoid of panic, charged with an immediate and total authority that superseded even that of the Satans and Seraphs. Your team, Sona's team. Your objective is the magicians. Do not let a single one interfere with us. Protect the school. Protect each other. Go. His command was the spark that reignited their courage. Rias, her eyes hardened with a king's resolve, didn't hesitate. You heard him. Peerage, with me, we're the shield. Kiba, Kaneko, front line. Akeno, air support. Issei, stay close. She and Sona exchanged a single, determined nod, and their two peerages moved as one. A disciplined unit charging towards the swarm of Chaos Brigade magicians who were still recovering from their leader's display of power. The lesser battle had begun. Naruto's gaze then snapped to the three most powerful beings on the field. Circex, Michael, Azazel. You're the hammer. Its power is immense but chaotic. It has no strategy. Contain it. Keep its attention focused here. Don't let it rampage. The three leaders, beings who hadn't taken orders from anyone in millennia, found themselves instinctively nodding in agreement. Naruto wasn't asking, he was coordinating. His mind processing the battlefield with the speed and clarity of a veteran Kage in a world war. Finally, he looked at the two stunned dragon emperors. Issei, Valley, D-Drag and Albion are reacting to that thing. You two are the key. It's a dragon. Find its weakness. Work together. I don't care about your rivalry. End it for the next 10 minutes or I'll end it for you permanently. Valley, for the first time, looked at Naruto not with arrogance, but with a grudging, astonished respect. He then shot a glare at Issei. Try to keep up, Red Dragon. He blasted off, his white wings reeing him into a high-speed flanking maneuver. Issei, shaking off the psychic pressure, roared in defiance. Boost. The familiar sound grounded him. Right behind you, bastard. With the battlefield delegated, Naruto became unnervingly still. He stood in the center of the devastated athletic field, a lone figure amidst the swirling chaos, his arms crossed. He closed his eyes, his sage senses flaring, pushing past the storm of negative emotions to analyze the enemy. He wasn't just watching a monster, he was reading its very soul, its history, its pain. The leaders attacked first. It was That hadn't been witnessed since the Great War. Sears's Lucifer moved, and with him moved the concept of annihilation. He didn't throw fireballs or unleash massive beams. He simply extended his hand, and the ground beneath the evil dragon ceased to be, crumbling into non-existence. The dragon roared in fury as it stumbled, its leg partially unmade. Michael ascended into the sky, his 12 golden wings forming a halo of pure divine light. He raised his spear, and a column of heavenly fire, so pure it seemed to burn the very concept of evil, descended upon the dragon. The creature shrieked, its shadowy scales sizzling and dissolving under the holy assault. Azazel, a grin of manic excitement on his face, activated his artificial sacred gear, the downfall dragon spear. A spear of dark, draconic energy, fused with his fallen angel power, materialized in his hand. He shot forward, a black comet, and plunged the spear into the dragon's side, the impact creating a shockwave that cracked the ground for miles. Any one of these attacks could have ended a war. The three of them, combined, could have reshaped the underworld. The evil dragon, impaled, burning, and partially erased, should have been dead. Instead, it roared again, and a wave of pure, negative energy exploded from its body. The shadowy flesh healed instantly. The holy fire was extinguished. The void left by Sears's power was filled with new, writhing tendrils of darkness. The dragon's mad, green eyes glowed with renewed fury. It's regenerating, Azazel shouted, dodging a swipe from a claw that was the size of a bus. Its very existence is fueled by hatred. Conventional destruction won't work. While the leaders kept the beast occupied, the battle on the perimeter was a showcase of the Gremory peerage's newfound strength. Kiba was a silver phantom, his sword a blur, disabling magicians with precise, non-lethal strikes to their joints and weapons. Kaneko, with her cat ears and tails fully manifested, was a miniature juggernaut. She moved with a fluid, controlled grace, her senjutsu-enhanced punches shattering magical barriers and sending robed figures flying without ever losing her footing. Akeno was the queen of the sky. She flew above the fray, a maelstrom of perfectly balanced power. A net of holy lightning would immobilize a group of magicians, their demonic bodies seizing in agony, and a fog-used blast of demonic thunder would follow, knocking them unconscious. There was no rage in her attacks now, only a cold, efficient, and devastating precision. She was no longer a half-breed hiding from her nature. She was the priestess of thunder and light, whole and terrible. Issei struggled. Diedrege's voice was a roaring inferno in his mind, not with commands, but with pure, instinctual rage. Rival, ancient enemy, I will devour you. The evil dragon was a perversion of their kind, an insult to the very concept of a dragon, and the proud spirit of the Welsh dragon was being driven into a frenzy. Balance breaker, Issei screamed, more to focus his own mind than for the power. The crimson armor enveloped him, but it felt unstable, the power fluctuating wildly. He saw an opening as Valley, with his divide ability, siphoned off a massive chunk of the dragon's power, causing it to stagger. Issei charged, gathering all his boosted power for a dragon shot. He fired, but the beam was unfocused, wild with Diedrege's rage. It splashed harmlessly against the dragon's shadowy hide. The dragon swatted at him, a casual backhand that would have flattened a mountain. Issei braced for impact, his armor already cracking under the immense pressure. But the blow never landed. A figure in gold appeared in front of him, one hand raised, catching the colossal claw. It was Naruto. Calm down, Naruto said, not even looking at Issei. His focus entirely on the dragon's claw held in his hand. Your dragon is letting his hate control him. You control the dragon, Issei. It doesn't control you. Focus. Remember the leaf. He shoved the claw back, forcing the massive dragon to take a step, then vanished, reappearing in the center of the field. Issei, his heart hammering in his chest, took a deep breath. The leaf. Control. Focus. He closed his eyes for a split second, ignoring the chaos around him, and focused on the raging storm within. He didn't try to silence Diedrege's anger, he accepted it, surrounded it with his own will. And gave it a purpose. The crimson aura around his armor stabilized, burning with a clean, focused intensity. Okay, Diedrege, he whispered. Let's do this. Together. The battle raged on, a stalemate of epic proportions. The leaders had the power to injure the beast, but not the means to put it down. The dragon had the power to regenerate from anything they could throw at it. It was a war of attrition. And the ancient, hate-fueled soul of the evil dragon had limitless reserves. "We need a new plan," Michael yelled, narrowly avoiding a stream of corrosive green fire that ate through the ground where he'd been hovering. "Our power only feeds its rage." It was then that Valley saw it. For a fraction of a second, as the dragon regenerated a wound from Searzex's attack, a glowing, spherical core of pure, condensed hatred was visible within its chest. "The core," Valley shouted into the communication network that Azazel had established. "Its soul is its core. We have to destroy it." "Easier said than done," Azazel grunted, his spear deflecting a volley of shadow spikes. "It's regenerating flesh faster than we can cut through it." "Then we don't give it time to regenerate," Issei's voice, now calm and determined, came over the comms. "Valley, you and me, now." The two dragon emperors looked at each other across the battlefield and shared a look of perfect, unspoken understanding. Their rivalry was, for this moment, a finely honed weapon. "Divide, divide, divide," Valley roared, flying straight at the dragon, his armor glowing with siphoned power. He wasn't attacking. He was draining the dragon's defenses, weakening the flesh around its core. "Boost, boost, 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 boost," Issei chanted, gathering an unprecedented amount of power, his crimson armor glowing like a miniature sun. "I, who am about to awaken," he began the chant, his voice resonating with Didrag's own. "Am the heavenly dragon who has stolen the principles of domination from God." The evil dragon, sensing the immense threat, roared and tried to swat Valley out of the sky. But Searzex and Michael intervened, unleashing a combined blast of destruction and holy light that momentarily bound the creature's limbs. "I laugh at the infinite, and I grieve at the dream." Valley, having drained as much as he dared, peeled off, his armor creaking under the strain. He had created the opening. "I shall become the red dragon of domination." Issei shot forward, no longer a clumsy brawler, but a focused projectile of pure, draconic power. "And I shall sink you to the depths of the crimson purgatory." Juggernaut drive. For a horrifying moment, a far more monstrous, berserk version of Issei's armor threatened to manifest. But he pulled back at the last second, channeling the raw, transformative power of the chant not into a new form, but into a single, ultimate attack. Longinus Smasher. A cannon barrel emerged from the chest of his armor. From it erupted a beam of crimson energy so vast, so dense, it seemed to bend the very light around it. It was the ultimate, anti-leader class attack of the Red Dragon Emperor. The beam struck the evil dragon dead center in the chest. Its shadowy flesh, weakened by Valley, was instantly vaporized. The beam pierced through and struck the soul core directly. The evil dragon gave a final, silent scream, not of sound, but of pure, psychic agony that ripped through everyone's minds. Its entire body dissolved, imploding into the single point of the core, which then shattered into a million motes of malevolent green light. For a moment, there was a stunned, victorious silence. Issei fell from the sky, his armor disintegrating, his body completely drained. He was caught by Kiba. Valley landed nearby, his own armor vanishing, panting with exhaustion. They had done it, but the battle wasn't over. The shattered motes of the dragon's soul did not fade. Instead, they began to coalesce, drawn together by an unseen force. The raw, negative energy was reforming, preparing to create a new, perhaps even more monstrous body. They hadn't destroyed the soul, they had only broken its vessel. "It's not over," Azazel yelled, his face grim. "It's reforming." The leaders prepared to attack again, but they were drained. The peerages were exhausted from their own battle. They had won the fight, but they were about to lose the war. It was then that Naruto finally moved. "My turn," he said, his voice quiet, yet it carried across the entire field. He raised a hand, and the world seemed to hold its breath. A sphere of swirling, chaotic black energy, a miniature-tailed beast bomb, formed in his palm. It was condensed with an amount of power that made Issei's Longinus Smasher look like a firecracker. Then, with his other hand, he infused it with the raw, slicing power of wind. A microscopic, Razor-sharp blade of wind chakra surrounded the dense, explosive orb. Sage art. Magnet release Rasengan, he whispered, infusing a third element. A sealing property inherited from a past life. The black sphere became threaded with glowing, intricate formula patterns, the same kind of seals he had used to bind gods. He looked at the coalescing soul of the evil dragon. He saw not just an enemy, but a being trapped in an eternal prison of its own hatred, an echo of Kurama in his darkest days. He wasn't going to destroy it. He was going to grant it peace. He threw the sphere. It didn't fly with a roar, but with a silent, terrifying speed. It struck the center of the reforming soul mass. There was no explosion. Instead, the sealing formula spread out like a net of light, enveloping every last mote of the dragon's soul. The tailed beast bomb's energy then detonated inward, not as an explosion, but as a cleansing implosion, a wave of pure, balanced nature energy that washed over the trapped soul. The wind chakra acted as a scalpel, shearing away the centuries of madness and hatred. The tormented, psychic roar of the dragon was replaced by a long, sorrowful sigh of release. The malevolent green light was purified, turning into a gentle, peaceful white. The motes of light did not scatter. They condensed into a single, small, teardrop-shaped crystal that fell from the sky and landed softly in Naruto's outstretched hand. The soul of the evil dragon, its hatred cleansed, was now dormant, at peace for the first time in millennia. Silence. Absolute, stunned silence. Everyone, the Satans, the Seraphs, the fallen angels, the dragon emperors, the Peerages, stared at Naruto. He stood there, holding the crystal, the sheer, casual, absolute nature of his power on full display. He hadn't just defeated the undefeatable enemy. He had saved its soul with a single, elegant attack. He had operated on a level of power and philosophy that was simply beyond them. The battle for the Peace Summit was finally, truly over. Naruto closed his hand around the crystal and turned to face the dumbfounded leaders. The peace treaty, he said, his voice calm. I think you should probably sign it now. Later that night, the academy was a wreck, but the occult research club room was an oasis of calm. The treaty had been signed, now an alliance for mutual defense. The Chaos Brigade had been declared a common enemy of all three factions. A new age had dawned, born from the fires of battle. Sirzex, Michael, and Azazel sat at the table with Naruto. The Peerages stood by, silent witnesses. We have never seen power like that, Naruto-san, Michael said, his voice full of a deep, profound reverence. It was not a power of destruction, but of salvation. It is, truly divine. What you did, Azazel said, his usual scientific curiosity replaced by pure awe, was rewrite the rules of soul magic in about 5 seconds. That thing was an echo of 666, a being of pure, conceptual hatred. It shouldn't be possible to cleanse it. Anything that is broken can be fixed, Naruto said simply, placing the dormant crystal on the table. Sirzex looked at Naruto, a new understanding in his eyes. He now realized the true scale of the being they had allied with. Your condition for joining us, you said you wanted to know about Trihexa. Today, we fought one of its children. The Chaos Brigade didn't just find it, they were led to it. They are trying to awaken the beast. I know, Naruto said. This is no longer a matter of politics or factional disputes. Sirzex continued, his voice grave. This is a war for the survival of this world. And we are out of our depth. We need you, Naruto. Not as an advisor, not as an honorary Gremory, but as our leader in this war. The commander of our allied forces. Naruto looked around the room. He saw the faces of Rias and her friends, looking at him with a mixture of awe, trust, and a little bit of fear. He saw the weary but determined faces of the faction leaders. He felt the weight of their world settling onto his shoulders. His quiet search for a way home seemed like a distant dream now. A selfish desire from another lifetime. These people, this world, they were his responsibility now. He had interfered. He had saved them. He had made their problems his own. He thought of the will of fire. He thought of his promise to protect his precious people. His village was gone, but his promise remained. Perhaps, his village had just gotten a whole lot bigger. He picked up the crystal from the table, its gentle light pulsing in his palm like a sleeping heart. All right, he said, his voice ringing with a familiar, unshakable resolve. Where do we start? Chapter 10 End.